Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. We are back, continuing on with our journey through the triennial Torah portion. This week we're going to be looking at Deuteronomy 22, verse 6 through 23, verse 9. Let's see here. We'll probably just go here. Thanks. We'll probably just look at this few verses at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and get right into it here. We want to we're gonna look at some of these verses and see what we can gain from these verses here. Let me pull up here. Let's see here. We'll read, let's see. We want to start off with, just read the 22 verse 6 and 7. We got kind of a lot of these, the portion that we're going to be looking at is kind of, it's packed with lots of different laws. So we'll have lots of things to deal with today. So we'll just read a couple verses at a time, each kind of little section at a time. So yeah, just read 6 and 7 there.
When you come upon a bird's nest along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go without fault, and take the young for yourself, so that it might be well with you, and that you shall prolong your days.
Okay, good. All right. So when we think about, we always hear and think about when Messiah is asked about the greatest command, right?
Right.
And we heard what the greatest command is. But if we was going to talk about the least command, I think this is it. This is the one right here. The least command.
The least command.
Right?
But it's interesting that within the least command, we are able to see within it a principle that kind of lifts it up to the level of the greatest command. So let's look at this, right? So dealing with this bird's nest is it's funny because I'm laughing because I in my work I go onto these people's property. I'm dealing with their electrical meter service, as an electrician, and not only is the meter in a place where it's kind of like right behind a tree,
right,
but right in the tree is this nest. And it's this little nest with it had about 3 or 4 little eggs in it. And I knew that the bird will fly away. It won't sit there. And the bird was kind of like, I could see him over across the way, kind of looking and seeing what I was doing. I didn't want to take the eggs, but I didn't want to touch the eggs at all, because sometimes if you put your smell on the eggs, the bird will just forget about it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to sit there and do what I had to do without kind of bumping the nest, and I thought I might break it or anything. So I'm sitting there, I went and got some gloves, and I carefully took the nest from one side of this bush and moved it over to the other side of the bush.
Right.
Trying to, I got these new gloves that I had, and moved the thing to another little spot, hoping that I didn't kill these eggs. But I don't really care about the birds, really. What I'm thinking about in my mind is this commandment right here. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, this commandment came to my mind when I'm sitting there thinking about caring for these birds, these little baby birds in this thing, because
So they were hatched.
They weren't hatched.
Oh, okay.
They were just eggs.
Okay, got you.
They were just some little. They didn't even look real. Little, because they're so. I'm used to seeing, chicken eggs.
Right, yeah.
And you see these little eggs are so small.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them, and again, all I can think about is this, right? I know that according to this, you could go ahead and take the eggs and leave the bird.
Right.
So essentially, if I was to create a situation where the bird wasn't ever going to come back to that particular nest, I would still be good in terms of this.
Right.
But I was, I didn't want the eggs, so it would really be a waste, right? It wasn't like I'm taking the eggs to use them. I'm just kind of just destroying them. But what I'm thinking about is the inner principle that's inside of this command, right? The inner what this command is getting you to do by keeping it, in terms of having the ability to take the young and leave the mother bird there. There's a principle that that's here in this command. So I was thinking about what the commandments that we see, because it's interesting that this commandment, when you see in verse 7, you shall certainly let the mother go, but the young you may take for yourself, in order that you may be well, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days.
Right.
We have this kind of attachment that's placed on this commandment of prolonging your days. Now, what's the first commandment that you think about that has this thing attached to it? The idea of keeping the commandment and doing so, it prolonging your days. Right. So that's Exodus. Let's go over there. Exodus 20. $12, actually, not 17. Respect your father and your mother, so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Right. So we had this command that's, in terms of, we're talking about the 10 commandments. Right. The things that we could take and look at each one of these commandments, and every one of the 613 laws, statutes, and commands, we're able to take and attach to one of these 10 commandments. So from that perspective, we can look at the 10 words and put them kind of on a pedestal, right? So when we look at this thing with the birds and the eggs, we think that this is kind of like this trivial kind of a thing. But at the end of it, it says that you may prolong your days. And one of the only other places that we see this attachment to these laws is within the 10 commandments, as it relates to honoring your father and your mother.
That's right.
Let's see. Deuteronomy. I'll go back to Deuteronomy. Another place where we see this. But there's kind of a pattern, I would say, to the commandments that have this added thing. Let's see, Deuteronomy 4 and 25. 25 and 26. When you bring forth children and grandchildren and shall grow old in the land and shall do corruptly and make a carved image in the form of whatever and shall do what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh, your Elohim, to provoke him, I shall call the heavens and earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. So here we see this thing that's happening when you are causing yourself and your children and your grandchildren to do corruptly, right? Then now we see the opposite happening, right? You do not prolong your days, right? So the connection that we see here really is dealing with this your inheritance, right? Your lineage, right?
That's right.
Whether it be you teaching your children to respect and honor that which they came from, because if we think about last week with the rebellious son, we see how his days could be ended, right?
Yeah.
From not honoring and respecting his father and mother. But when we think about what's actually going on is if we look where it talks about diligently teaching your children the commandments, what you're doing is you're continuing on the people, right? You're continuing on this Israelite culture, right? By loving the Father, by teaching your children to love the Father, and keeping that cycle going, right? So there's a literal thing that's going on in terms of keeping this lifestyle going. But so we're reminded of this when we think about the idea with the birds and the eggs, right? Because you can remove the eggs, you can take the eggs, but you don't remove the ability for there to be more eggs, which would be, you killing the mother, right? You're keeping alive the potential to continue and thrive, right? So we see here with the example in Deuteronomy 4 and 25, where it's dealing with the children and the grandchildren and them growing old in the land and being corrupted, right? So if you're corrupting the children, you're corrupting the ability for the ways of the Most High to be carried on. Right. So we can see that principle inside of this thing here with the mother and his eggs. Let's see what else. Okay, so another thing that we see, let me go back over to chapter 22. Another thing that we see inside of here, the action, right? The action that's taking place. Oh, wait a second. It's chapter 22, verse 6. The action that's taking place. What is it that you would be kind of operating in this action here of allowing these eggs or the mother to survive here?
You say what action?
What action are you manifesting when you keep this commandment?
Showing love. Showing love.
Compassion.
Love.
Compassion. That's good. Compassion. Love, I would say. Love.
Prudence, wisdom,
And awareness. Awareness of the laws. So.
I was looking for what I was looking for was what you said in terms of compassion, because you have when you think about compassion, you have the ability to do a thing, but you're not exercising your abilities, and the reason why you're doing it doesn't have anything to do with the thing. In other words, as a human being, you have all the ability in the world to be able to reach down and smush an ant, right? Or some pest inside of your dwelling, right? You're perfectly able to do that, right? But to not do it, to hold back something that potentially is owed to another, something that you hold back, and it doesn't have anything to do with the thing, but something that's originating inside of you, that's compassion. I'm going to deal with you not because you're this terrible person, because if I dealt with you as a terrible person, it could potentially cause me to be terrible towards you. But I am going to deal with you in spite of the fact that you're a terrible person, and I'm going to treat you the way that I feel like treating you. Right? So that's compassion. So when I look and I see that I have this ability to destroy the whole bloodline of this bird, I have the ability to do it. I don't do it. Right? So when we look at that, let's look at this. There's two words I wanted to look at. The first being chesed. Let me pull this up here. Chesed. Two, 6, 7. Okay, chesed, kindness. I think the one I wanted to look at really here is this beauty.
Beauty.
Right? Because when we think about this word chesed, kindness, favor, goodness, mercy, beauty is interesting, because when you think about something as possessing beauty, you're putting value on that thing, right? You're looking at this, whatever this thing is, and you're valuing this thing. You're deciding within yourself that this thing is a valuable thing, and then you're treating it that way, right? So that's what we see when we think about chesed, right? You looking at a thing and deciding that this thing is valuable and beautiful, and dealing with it in that way. So again, we think about the idea of treating people in this way, right? Again, we're finding the beauty in a individual and dealing with them based on that, right? Instead of, you know, kind of what they're giving us, right? We do this with our children, right? Our children sometimes behave in very ugly ways, right? But the beauty of the fact that they're actually your children.
I mean, you can correct them. I mean, you can.
You don't gotta finish them, right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to destroy them. And you're not throwing them in the garbage. Right. You're able to find a value in these little things. our beloved children, right? But it's finding the beauty, whatever that may be, right? In regards to your children, you know, that's easy. But what about people that are not?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when we look at this command that's dealing with these birds and these eggs, you know, not only do we see the idea of it showing us about the preserving the continuity of a family, right? But it's showing us and teaching us how to exhibit mercy, right? When you are treating this person or this thing not based on its own characteristics, but the beauty or the value that you are placing on this particular thing. You know, people talk about the beauty being in the eye of the beholder. Right. That's a true statement, right? Because what you're really talking about is you placing value on a thing and then treating it that way. Let me see if I'm able to draw on here. I think I can do it. Oh, wait a second. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I'm able to draw. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's see. Let's make this nice and fat here. Okay, so this word chesed. Chesed. The Hebrew is a chet. I don't know why it's so elongated. I don't know why I made it like that. Okay, so it's a samech. And a dalet. Chesed. So the ancient looks like this. The ancient is a fence, right? So when we think about chesed and the ancient as a fence, it's a thing that it makes a distinction between the inside and the out. It determines the inside and the out. So we have this fence here and this samech is a thorn. Right? And we think about the samek, the samek surrounds, it kind of has an idea of when you think about something that is surrounded with thorns, it does kind of the thing that you see with the het, because it's going to stop you from going. It's going to stop you from going in and out. But the idea here, I think, is the idea of surrounding, and the dalet is the door flap, the tent flap, so the movement. So we think about chesed, again, chesed being kindness, favor, beauty. So when we think about chesed, if we're exhibiting chesed, we are, when you think about this again, you have the distinction that surrounds the movement, the distinction that surrounds and even protects the movement. How that relates to mercy is when we're dealing in mercy, you're not dealing with something in terms of what you're looking at, but you're dealing with it in terms of the value that you're placing on it. It's the same thing like you mentioned love, right? Love is not reactionary. It's the same thing with mercy. Love is really kind of the value that you're placing on something and then dealing with that thing based on the thing that's inside of you, right? So it's not reactionary. It's not dealing with something because of what it is, but you're dealing with something in spite of the fact. So even when we think about how the Most High deals with us as being this kind of these wretched individuals that we are, right? He decides to deal with us not because of any goodness that dwells inside of us, but he's dealing with us based on his own character, right? So when we think about this idea of mercy that we see inside of this commandment, we are exhibiting the character of the Almighty, right? By doing this thing that is the least commandment, right? When we think about this thing that's just about some birds in a nest, it's not really that important. But when we look at the inner workings of this command, it causes us to test the character of the Almighty. Okay, so let's see here. What's this other one? Oh, so another thing that we could look at that we see inside of this, another word is kindness.
Kindness.
Right? Chesed is mercy. Another word is kindness. Let me pull this one up here. 7, 3, 5, 6. Raham. Now this one's interesting, right? The word compassion, by extension, the womb, as cherishing the fetus, right? This word is giving you this idea that's bringing across this idea of the womb as cherishing the fetus. The bowels, compassion. So when you think about a womb, right, again, it's giving you this idea of something that's within, right? Something that's within. But we're talking about kindness. So it's talking about how we're dealing with others. So it's another thing that we're looking at that's it's kind of along the same lines in terms of, you know, how we are relating, where is not dependent upon the what's outside, but more so what's inside, right? Especially here when this word is translated as kindness is womb.
Which word is that for?
Kindness.
No.
We just talking about the principles. Those words aren't in the verse.
Oh, not in this. Oh, okay. Got you. Right.
We're talking about the principles that we see inside of the command in terms of not destroying these birds and the bird bloodline.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah, these words aren't in the verse. We're just dealing with the principles that we see inside of the verse, which again we see mercy and kindness. Again, so basically when we look at this command, you know, the main thing I wanted to deal with is the fact that this command that again could be classified as the least commandment when we look at it, and when we see what principles is putting forth, is causing us to actually walk in the character of the Almighty, right? When we carry out this command here. Okay, so anybody else have any thoughts or comments about this commandment with the bird and its nest before we go to the next thing?
Said everything that came to my mind, bro. You know? Especially about the part of honoring your mother and father. So your days will be long, lifted. That's very important. A lot of these young people don't understand that today. You know?
Yeah.
The scriptures also says a fool can cut his own life short. We don't say it exactly like that, but that's exactly what it means. So when we don't honor our parents, it seems that bad things tend to happen. You know, we don't honor our parents. They honor the streets. They honor the street life. They honor the world. They honor deception. But what about when the parents don't even honor y'all themselves?
Yeah.
They don't even give the instruction, because it also says train your child up in the ways to go.
Yeah.
So that they will not depart from it.
Yeah. When we think
both
about,
have an obligation.
There's an obligation on both. And again, we think about, we can't necessarily look at those on the outside and expect for those on the outside to function as we function on the inside. The way that the Most High will have for his people to be is for his people as individuals, first of all, to be walking in his ways. And then, of course, just like on the side of a shampoo bottle, right? You're going to wash and repeat.
Yeah, they're right.
Right? So you are going to follow after the Most High, and then you're going to show your children how to keep this thing going. Right? So we can look at this whole bird thing And we could talk about the way that the Most High wants for families to continue and be strong and go forward. And how again that he doesn't want the potential for growth to be destroyed. Right? Because that's what would happen if you killed the mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bird mom, the potential for growth has been destroyed. Right? But again, how can we apply this in our lives? Right? This is the Most High showing us, even through this command, that he wants for us to be able to realize our potential. Right? And for that not to be stifled.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
To see us as he sees us. Yeah. Potential.
Okay, so let's keep on going here, because when we look at these commands, it's giving you a literal command, but there's principles that are underlying principles that we see inside of them. The next one I think is just a single verse, verse 8. Just read that verse.
When you build a new house, then you shall make a proper for you your roof, so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house when one falls from it.
Okay, so the houses that were made at this time, with those people were kind of like, not like how we have these houses that have the points on top. They were basically like a flat top place.
Flat top, yeah.
Right? So this parapet, like a fence, basically.
Are you going to the Hebrew word for it?
Yeah. King James says battlement.
Yeah, battlement.
That word is ma'aki. To repress battlement. Let's see. Railing. Put to keep anyone from falling off the edge of something.
Thank you.
Right? So it's basically a fence to keep somebody from falling off of your roof.
Like a guard.
Yeah. So built in, we see that the Most High doesn't want for you to cause someone to be hurt or potentially even die. We could just say hurt to whatever degree due to your own negligence. Right? So I don't have a roof where somebody's gonna. When I think about this command, I think about living in Pittsburgh in the wintertime.
So you sunk down, so they don't slip and fall. I'm sorry to take you. That's what you was going to say.
That's because if something like that was to happen on your sidewalk, it's happening because of your own neglect. Right? Now you could say, they gonna have to just take care of their own self. Right? You just walk in the street where they come through with the plow. Don't walk on the icy sidewalk. Don't worry about, that's what you could say. But when you think about this command, again, the underlying principle is causing you is causing you to care about the well-being of others, and as far as you can reach, right? As far as you can physically reach, right? Where it can potentially apply to you in any way, right? So it's almost your responsibility to, when people are walking by your domain area, to ensure that nobody's going to be hurt because of your neglect, and that's in the Torah. So, I mean, you could really say that the Torah is causing you breaking the Torah by not shoveling and salting your sidewalk.
Dang.
Because you are putting this, you will be putting blood guilt on your house if somebody was to fall as a result of your neglect of your sidewalk.
If they die.
Well, if they're hurt. Well, blood guilt. We talking about fall. The commandments dealing with falling off a roof.
What they doing
If you
on
fall,
the roof though?
if you
that
fall,
must have been a popular thing back in the day.
well, it's interesting when you look at they really utilize the whole dwelling.
Yeah,
and it's weird when you look at it because the animals lived in their house too. They basically had their animals in the house with some people had 2 floors. Again, with animals in the house that they all lived in, there might be a separation, but there was your animals, your little whatever you had was in there with you. And again, they had these flat tops, so they were utilizing all of the space.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Maybe it wasn't just a stranger just wandering onto your roof, but maybe you was up there, having a little gathering or something. Somebody had some strong drink and kind of fell off the side. Like,
you gotta think the quote unquote invention of a guardrail ain't come from nowhere. People have been falling off some stuff and be like, I'll make this a commandment, because y'all just falling off.
But again, the thing that is teaching us is to actually have these checks in place where something bad couldn't happen to somebody, and then at the end of the day they could point back at you and say it's because of you that it happened. And that's basically what we see right there. And again, I think it's a perfect example because dealing with, we live in the place that we live in, where somebody, it's very easy for somebody to get hurt on your sidewalk. In this climate that we live in. I literally hate when it snows on Friday night. Because I don't want to have to go out there and shovel the snow on the Shabbat.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I hate when it snows on Friday night. But when you think about it in the context of this, it's almost like you're keeping a commandment by shoveling the snow in front of your house on a Shabbat.
Yeah.
I think anyway. Because you're preventing somebody from being hurt due to your negligence.
Right.
I would say.
Yeah. That's pretty plain.
I mean, I have Hisky do it anyway, but
Hisky, get out there and shovel this. You're supposed to honor me.
but I don't think I'm causing Hisky to transgress, because we really just, it's not because I want my sidewalk to be clear just for it. I don't want nobody getting hurt on my sidewalk. If it was up to me, I wouldn't do nothing to the sidewalk.
You just don't want no blood guilt on your sidewalk. There you go.
I know, but somebody could easily just fall. I got that little wall.
Right.
Somebody could slip and bust their head off of that wall on the corner.
Yeah.
Oh man, that could be devastating.
Blood guilt. Don't want that.
It's a heck of a suing process.
That could be devastating, right?
Could be somebody in your own family that do it, that bust their head on the wall.
Mm.
Right. Well, they don't go. Hisky's the only one that goes out there. Take the garbage out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that this, although we don't have this situation in terms of a house and a fence on the roof, we do have the situation of preventing others from getting hurt due to our neglect. And a lot of things got to happen for it to actually be blood guilt, for somebody actually dying as a result of it. But it's not beyond the realm of I never forget. My uncle saw, when he was going to back in high school, he saw a lady. She just happened to fall on the street, but a truck was driving by it right when she fell and got ran over.
Oh wow!
Like it had just went from just a simple little fall to being dead, like just from the fall.
Yeah.
So you never know. But again, I think it behooves us to be able to look at these commands and not just say, well, nobody should be on my roof, or I don't have a roof for them to even be on, so I don't even got to worry about this one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the better thing is, like what we do sitting here doing right now, is see how this can apply to us and what's the underlying principle that's within it. Okay, so let's look at I think we could probably look at 8. We could look at 9, 10, 11 all basically together.
Mm-hmm.
9, 10, 11. You want to read that?
Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Do not put on a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together.
Okay. So
They should know why, too.
Excuse me.
Hmm?
They should know why.
What you mean?
Why we shouldn't do that.
What are your thoughts?
I look at it like stuff to defile, like different, like for instance.
You talking about as far as the verse 9?
Yeah, especially like 9 through 11, through the whole 11, different crops, precepts. They, also precepts appear also in like Leviticus 9:19, more briefly, but however, like defiled or sanctified, different crops become common in different times. The year's corn was fed by waves of sheep and waves of blows. The trees not for 5 years to rule about. This is the rule, like the rule about the ox and ass may rest partly on the ground of humanity, like the step in the pool of the two creatures being so very unlike. You understand? Like unequally yoked. so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of unequally yoked, you will look at this verse 10 in terms of the ox and the donkey together. You have two animals that are, the ox is very strong,
Right.
right? So he'd basically be pulling the donkey and the plow, right? So when you think about that, you have these two animals that are doing this work where you will probably be kind of almost torturing the donkey,
Right.
connecting it with this ox.
Mm.
So you creating a kind of a inequitable situation with these animals here.
That's like water and oil don't go together, but they both liquids. You know?
Yeah.
Think
You can put donkeys. A donkey can be a thing that you could use, that could be used for carrying things,
mm-hmm.
but it's just not able to compare to the strength of an ox.
Right. They both have their own purpose.
Right, which you would kind of be mixing those things together, right? So I think in terms of verse 10, it's probably more so dealing with your kindness towards that lesser animal.
Right, because you can apply the precepts of 2 Corinthians 6:14 by being unequally yoked together with unbelievers. You know, like for instance, the ox was a clean animal and fit for sacrifice, where the ass was unclean and must be redeemed with the lamb. Now the clean and unclean must not till the holy land of Yah together. You know, all the precepts are part of the laws of holiness in Leviticus and rules of behavior arising from the fact that Israel itself is a special people of Yah.
Yeah. Or I would say that I mean, we could look back. I'm not sure about the whole idea of this whole sacrificing thing, because it don't say nothing about not plowing with a donkey. You could plow with a donkey and you could plow with an ox, but you wouldn't put the two of them together.
That's what I'm saying.
And plow
together.
So I'm not sure about the sacrificing thing, but again, when I look at this, it's probably kind of from a practical standpoint, in terms of, you having this big strong animal next to an animal that's not as as strong, right?
It'll always be like driving a car.
Chris, I didn't even notice you sitting over there. You just snuck in on me under the radar.
He done got you, man. Somebody was looking for you, man.
Oh, you done got me. I'm slipping, man.
I thought we spoke when we came in. Oh, but it'll be like driving a car that needs a wheel alignment.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna pull to one side. Yeah, it'd be exactly like that. Okay, so now verse 9. We look at verse 9. This I mean, in terms of you having your own vineyard, that is something that's easy for you to do. Well, unless you go and you get these strange seeds that they have nowadays. It's hard, living the way that we live today, because we don't really know what we're eating. Literally, we don't know what we're eating. They sit up here and they make these things, and they go and take these things into a lab somewhere, and they genetically modify these things, on a molecular level. It's absolutely crazy. So again, you don't know what you're getting. Like you could go and get a seed and it be a seed that it actually has different seeds in it. I've probably told this before, but you know, I bought these peppers. I bought this batch of peppers and I made this wonderful hot sauce with these peppers. And I felt like, because like it was after my father passed and he never really showed me how he made his hot sauce. So when I started making hot sauce, I just made it how I thought he made his, but he never really showed me the secrets. But one of the first times that I did it, I got the result, and it kind of was like, this was the one. Like, so I took seeds from the peppers that I used,
right,
and planted them. I knew there was peppers. Because I made sauce out of it. So I planted the seeds, but the thing that grew was not peppers. It did not even look like peppers.
What did it look like?
It looked like these little, they were red peppers. What grew looked like these little kind of dark purplish balls.
Abomination. An abomination of
it didn't look nothing like a pepper. It looked like some you ever see like in the little bushes, them little red and green balls?
Yeah.
It looked like that, but it was like dark, like almost purple. From a pepper seed.
That's crazy.
So I ended up taking it to this botanist place up. There's like a little plant store up on Brownsville Road. I took it up and talked to the lady, and she was describing to me that, you know, if you keep on taking a seed and replanting it, GMO seed, and you just keep on taking it, eventually it's going to go back to one of the things that it used to be.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
That's like tradition. Eventually it's going to go back to where it came from. They keep practicing all your traditions.
Man. So that's what happened. But I was sitting up here sowing these different kinds of seeds and didn't even realize it.
You know what? I started to speak on the diverse seeds.
That's a shame.
With the diverse kind of seeds mixed and sowed together between the rows of vines in the vineyard, which was forbidden and done in the field, according to Leviticus 19:19. And here in the vineyard, you know, with any kind of seed different from that of the vine, which would produce either herbs or corn or fruit-bearing trees, whose fruits might be mingled with the fruit of the vine. Now this and the following precepts, though themselves small and trivial, are given according to that time and state of the congregation or assembly for instructions in greater matters, and practically to commend to them simplicity in all their carriages towards Yah and man, and to forbid all mixtures of their inventions of Yah's institutions and doctrines and worship, which a lot of people do today. They mix their own leaning of understanding in Yah's word and create a twisted doctrine.
Yeah, so when you look at these ideas of mixing, definitely the idea of, when you think about it from a spiritual perspective, and you see, like, we're at that time of year when we see perfect examples of people taking their worship towards the God of the Bible and mixing it with pagan practices.
Yeah.
So from a spiritual perspective, you know, you see this idea of sowing these different kinds of seeds in the vineyard, and
GMO religion. Scientific modified religion.
Yeah.
Now genetically modified, like Beyonce, Bayism, the new ingredient to religion.
I mean, definitely that principle, we see that, you know, from a spiritual perspective. And again, we look at these things that are, you know, physical things that he's telling for us not to do, and looking at it from a spiritual standpoint, right? So, you know, that's a perfect example of that. In terms of, let's see, verse 11, I guess it's the same concept, but it's still like a physical thing. So, you know, when you look at, now question, we look at verse 11. Do not put a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together. Do we look at this and say specifically it's talking about mixing wool and linen together? Or is that just an example?
Oh, can I say something?
Sure.
So I was looking up the way of producing linen, the method,
Mm-hmm.
the ancient method where you
Linen is a plant.
it's flax. Yep,
Yeah.
Flaxseed.
it's flax. So you go out and get your flax. You gotta beat it. You gotta dry it. You gotta beat it. You gotta comb it through. It's like this long, big process. So it's like, and then you make it into a thread, just like you would do with wool or with cotton or with any other thing. So, but it was like flax in ancient Israel. A lot of it came from Egypt. They had a lot of flax down in Egypt. Even when you read like about Passover, it talks about how the flax being in, what is it, in the bud or something like that. Anyway, but they also had some flax in Israel as well. So I would say that it was specifically talking about flax and wool because those were the two types of materials they was dealing with back then. Like if they was dealing with cotton, they wasn't really dealing with cotton. They didn't have polyester.
No, they wasn't dealing with plastics back in those days.
They might have had like hides, but that wasn't like fabric.
So you think it's specific to wool and linen?
Uh-huh. And that's based off of like just looking at what the two different types of materials they had, and those were the things they had available in that area.
It seems to be a pattern of, you know, just separation of different
Things.
Like everything has its place and its space. And you gotta, you know, basically separate, you know, those things. It's like eating. I don't like my food mixing.
You don't like your food to
Nah,
touch.
I don't like my food to touch.
Yeah, but you like potato salad.
I do like potato salad.
That's a contradiction.
I do like potato salad.
I used to talk to little Tony about that. He'll have a plate of food and everything will be separated, but he loved potato salad, which is this thing of everything mixed.
It's meant to be.
Exactly.
It's
Made
meant
like
to be.
that. But I don't want my potato salad touching my peas.
Yeah.
That's not meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, some things you mix together don't taste right.
That's funny. Okay, so right. So we look at all three of these verses together as giving you kind of this whole thought process of having things being separate. I mean, when I think about wool or linen, right? Wool seems like it's gonna be hot. And linen, you know, it's gonna be that's so much we wear in the summertime. Yeah, like a linen leisure suit. And wool is gonna be something, you know, for the winter. So people look at stuff like this and say, well, it got to be 100% cotton, or I can't wear it. Right? Because if it's not, you got a mixture. I shouldn't be wearing no mixtures. We taking it to that extent, or if we looking at it as this being specifically what it's talking about in terms of the wool and the linen.
Listen, a garment of woolen and linen together. And in Ezekiel 44:17, I just looked it up, 17 to 18, the priests are altogether forbidden to use of woolen garments during their ministry. And the fine linen is the righteous of the saints. Revelations 19:8. Literally their requirement. That is what they need, but it is said of the priests in Ezekiel, they shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat, that which cometh out of the man defiles the man. Again, in y'all's dwelling place, the interior of the Mishkan, tabernacle. How you say that?
Mishkan.
The Mishkan, yeah. The tabernacle where he abode was of fine linen. And the outer tent of the coverings were hair, skin, and wool. The tabernacle where he dwells, in the earthly house of the tabernacle must be kept distant, while his tabernacle remaineth among us in the midst of our uncleanliness, according to Leviticus 16:16.
Yeah. The priests, they definitely only had on their linen garments.
That's interesting. They weren't supposed to sweat.
Okay. There ain't nothing that causes them to sweat.
Well, they had what was specified for them to wear, and it just happened to be linen. But when you think about the tabernacle, now, the tabernacle was covered with a variety of things,
You're right.
including unclean things. But that's a whole other situation. But in general, the idea of mixtures is always going to cause problems and be something that's that should be avoided.
That's the problem with the world today. They're always trying to mix something.
Yeah.
Mix this and that.
And I think in general, the concept of the mixture is a problem that people don't get. Like, again, we talked about this the other week, where people they want to put their Christ in Christmas, right?
Yeah. But
I'm not worshiping no tree. Like, I just have a tree there. You know what I mean? I worship Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But they don't understand the principle that the Most High don't want his things to look like these other things.
Right, to be
he don't want the mixture.
No.
And it's a principle that that we see even down to the seed in the clothes.
Right.
That he wants for things kind of to be singularly focused in terms of what
just the way he want them to be,
the way that it was created to be. If
Right,
you're gonna have something
right.
wool, let it be a wool thing. If you're gonna have a linen thing, let it be a linen thing.
Let an apple be an apple and the orange be an orange.
Right. You can't have these mixtures of things.
If I could imagine it, it'd be like, for instance, like the saying, "You put Christ in Christmas." You know what I mean? It's like having a pot on the stove.
Yeah.
The stove got the pot got all kind of foul things in it, just all kind of nasty stuff.
Right.
And then you try and take this holy thing
Right.
and put it in the pot.
Right.
Yeah.
And mix it up with all the just muck and poop
Yeah.
and mire. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you try to take this holy righteous thing,
Mhm.
put it in the pot.
And make it good. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't fit.
It's impossible.
That's
It's an
what they do to
impossibility.
tradition today, though.
It's an
They're not blaming on the
impossibility.
children. Oh, we're doing this for the kids. They need to know. Don't they realize if they lie to their children at an early age, the children will grow up and become deceivers themselves? They lie to their children, but get mad when the children lie to them. But they insinuating that it's all right because they lie about tooth fairy, lie about Satan's Claus, Santa Claus, Valentine's Day. They bring in the New Year's honoring Janus, the two-headed gods, but they don't understand the principles and concept of loving Yah He tells them directly in the same Bible that's preached from every Sunday on the pulpit. You know, you ain't supposed to do none of this.
Right.
But they neglect that and turn around and do it indirectly sometimes because of tradition.
Right.
And you know, when I gave an example about tradition, you know, I asked the woman at my job, why do you put everything in a pot when you make your stew? She said, because my mother do it. I said, well, let's ask your mom and see what she say. She said, oh, she'll say her mom did it. I said, well, okay, let's cut to the chase and get to the main source of the reason why it's done. You'll see that there was a problem why it was done because they only had one pot to do it. So when you get to this person to ask them, why do you put everything in your pot when you make stew? And they're like, are you kidding me? That's all we could afford. But see, that's how tradition starts. So we don't know where all these traditions is coming from because we try to make good with it. We think it's a good thing, you know, when it maybe it's not. You know, not saying that that's a bad tradition. You know?
I know, because stew is pretty good.
Stew is good. But there are some good traditions and there are some bad ones. It's just the world embraced the bad ones over the good. Because there is good traditions and customs in Israel. Our Israelite ancestors kept good traditions and customs.
I'm gonna create some.
Yeah.
Yeah, you keep saying that.
They ain't gonna be religious, you know. They just gonna be, you know, family traditions.
I'm gonna create a trend-setting tradition that's applying to the rules of y'all, though. You know, I'm not going outside of the guidelines or the protocol. The problem with these people, especially Christians, you know, I won't even mention Islam because they so way out of there. But the Christians, because the reason why I say Christians, because they have the Bible, they have the tools, they have the secrets. It's really not a secret. They just don't want to look into it. The reason why I talk about them so much is because they have the same Bible we have, you know, basically not the actual Bible, but they have a King James version, mainly the New Testament. But when they preach from these Bibles and the truth is already in there, I can't wrap my head around why they claim they love God so much, but refuse and neglect his warnings. I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say that when you look at what you have with mainstream Christianity, you know, if all I did was read the New Testament, what we know of as Christianity is there's nothing you can't go against it. Right. Because you looking at it from that New Testament viewpoint with no Torah foundation.
Right.
You don't have the historical context of what the people was, you know, where the people was at.
That's right.
If you don't have that foundation, you just starting the story off at the end and you don't know what the the foundation of it all is. So when you see the things that, you know, how people look at the things that Paul might say, or even things that Yeshua even might say,
right?
If you don't have that foundation in the Torah to understand where he was coming from when he said it, then, you know, those people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because, you know, if they looking at the book from starting at the end, you don't have any idea, you don't have a context to put it with. You know what I mean? So you said if you're defining terms based on a New Testament thought process, that's what you come up with, and you don't mixing these things together. You know, you have no concept of it because you don't have a foundation to even go back to. Right. So you know, that's where and that's why it's important for people to go back and look at the so-called Old Testament, because when you have that foundation, it's able to correct the thoughts that we have. You know, Chris, you talk with people in mainstream Christianity all the time, hardcore Christian people, so right? And they'll bust out some New Testament scriptures on you in a minute. Right? But we have a whole Bible here now. And it's a continuing story from start to finish.
Right.
And if all I got is just one side of it, is incomplete.
Right.
So it's important for us to be able to get people to go back to the foundation, right? And that's what we're doing here. So when we talk about traditions or customs, we have a custom in verse 12.
Hey, before you go to verse 12, I did want to make a point that when I did speak to a pastor not too long ago, I asked him when was the last time he did a sermon on Deuteronomy 28. He told me he never done it, because he don't go into that. And I explained to him that's because that comes from the stem of the establishment of replacement and reverse theology, where they get you to believe that our people are Gentiles and those imposters over there are God's chosen people. So they think that them being Christians, that these laws and ordinances and statutes do not apply to them. That's the main purpose of why they think the way they think today. Because I told them, you cannot build a house from the second floor. You got to have a foundation. You have to read the Old Testament. They work hand in hand. You can't pick and choose. Just like the Torah only keepers. They're the same way. They want to build a foundation, but just leave the second floor done. They don't even have a complete house because they reject the New Testament, but they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I call them cherry pickers.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
You need to have both. And that's built in. You know what I mean? If I want my thing to strive, I'm not going to I can't kind of get people to try to get into the thing that's going to break my thing down. Right. So if I want to perpetuate mainstream Christianity, I must keep it in the New Testament.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if I start looking at the whole book, my stuff's gonna fall apart.
Right. You're right.
Yep. That's their central focus. They don't use the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And if you in one of these, like just like a second Baptist church, like if you in one of these like named churches, as the pastor, you can't even talk about whatever you want to talk about. They tell you what to talk about. And if you start going away from the teachings, you getting wrong. Kicked out.
Yeah.
What you doing?
So it's just
so I used to ask a lot of questions. I explained that in the page that we got, the new one, about the evils of replacement or reverse theology. And I explained how when I was a Christian, they would teach us that Jesus nailed the laws to the cross and God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And they talk about the world as everybody and et cetera, all the Christian doctrine. But when I started studying Deuteronomy 28, I started to see things, and it was confusing. So when I brought it to the pastor's attention, said, who are these people they talking about that were scattered to the four corners of the earth and brought back to Egypt by way of ships? Those was the Jews. No, they wasn't. No one fit this description but us, man. I'm confused. What's going on here? You understand? But they shied away from my answers. They always told, you ain't supposed to question God. You ever heard that before?
Yeah.
You ain't supposed to question God. So I was like, what the?
And the other thing is that you can't assume that just because somebody is like a pastor of some church that he even is looking at these things. Because again, when they go into these seminaries, they are indoctrinated in these seminaries, and they teach. If you go and you can talk to a million of these mainstream Christian peoples, and they're gonna come and hit you with the same things because that's what they have been indoctrinated with. But we don't want to go too far off of thing here. Let's look at verse 12 here.
That's my favorite verse right there. I like that.
Verse 12.
Explain that one.
Read verse 12 here.
Make tassels on the four corners of the garment with which you cover yourself.
Okay, so
I'll let you break that down.
When we look at verse 12 here, this verse here gives us a different word from Numbers 15 verse 38. We're used to seat, right? We talk about the tassels and we use seat as what it says over in let's see here, Numbers 15:38. The first place we see it. And then the scriptures version don't even translate it. I think it might, does it say tassels or fringes in the King James there?
I think it said tassels or fringes.
Fringe is what it is, yeah. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them to make tzitzit on the corners of their garments throughout the generations, and put the blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners. That is Numbers 15:38, where we see it for the first time. And like I said, the word there is tzitzit, which is it's fringes. It means a floral or wing-like projection.
Right.
A forelock of hair, a tassel, fringe, or lock. But over in Deuteronomy, what we're looking at here, Deuteronomy 22, what verse is that? 12. It's a different word. For tassels, so let me pull it up here. Make the fringes. Okay, here's the word. Fringes. Gadil.
In the sense of twisting thread, that is a tassel or festoon, fringe, wreath.
Right, so it's a word that's giving you kind of the same thought, really, but it's just using a different word where it's still kind of this idea of fringes. It uses this word festoon, which is a word that you don't really know what that word means. That word is, let's see, being suspended by the ends, the extremities of which hang down perpendicularly. So it's basically what we think of when we think of fringes, how we have these things that hang.
Right.
Can
I share something on that?
Well, hold on one second. And then when we look at this, so upon the four corners, right?
Yeah.
So that four literally means four. It's literally four, arba. Four. It's the word that literally means four. Corners or quarters, what it says in the King James, quarters, that word is kanaf. Kanaf is the edge or extremity, specifically of a bird or a army, talking about the wing, or again, the extremities of a garment or bed clothing, a flap, of the earth, a quarter, or a building like the pinnacle. Again, we think about this word kanaf is giving you this idea of the borders, the edges, the corners. It's mostly translated as wings because we think about wings. Wings are these things that stretch out, right? They're the extreme parts of the bird, the extremities. As they represent the part that covers and or that stretches out. But we also see skirt. Skirt is also used, something that is used that also conveys that same idea of the thing that covers. So, and then even inside of the verse, is dealing with the aspect of covering. It says, "You shall make for yourself tassels and put them on the four extremities of your garments, with which you cover yourself." So it's giving you that idea of the covering, the extremities. It's interesting. We was looking at. I should have got some pictures of this. We were looking at some kind of historical pictures of tassels, right? And we think about how, we have like some people have like on the four corners, the strings that hang down. Then we have the people who have around the whole rim of your situation, the fringes that hang down. And then I've also even seen some people have like a little kind of sash looking thing that hangs down. I don't see many people, but I have seen some with those little. Do you have that little book thing that you had? I don't know how I could. Can you flip to? I wonder if I'm able to show.
All you gotta do is put it to the camera, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it'll look though. It's interesting. We see. I don't want to rock the boat thing, but since we're talking about it,
Rock the boat.
yeah. As she looks, maybe I can.
Can I interject something?
Go ahead.
As she look, thou shalt make thee fringes.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt make these fringes, kanafs, or fringes, or tzitzis. The origin of this requirement is found in Numbers 16, 32, 41.
15.
And we may recall this as fringes or kanafs on the four sides of the square shawl, mantle, or mourning for the one man who was executed for Sabbath breaking in the wilderness. As well as a reminder to Israel to do all the commandments and be holy unto Yah. When these kanafs or fringes is worn by Yeshua on earth, the sick laid hold and were healed. And his obedience, his suffering for the transgression of Yah's people, who are us, are perfected without flaw. And the principles of these precepts is evident. Even the dress codes of Yah's people must be distinctive. And whether they eat or drink or whatever they do, they must do all to the glory of Yah. And these laws have symbolical and sanitary sides, being made for the physical well-being as well as for the spiritual teachings of Yah's people, who is indeed us, which is why we wear that, because we're distinctive, set apart, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, let me.
And then we had two other ones.
All right, just let me have my finger in the page where the other ones are.
Well,
I don't even know if you're able to see. You probably can't.
You can see.
I guess you can see it, huh?
Get the,
Okay, so it's hard to tell here, but it's what we think of as you can't see it. It's kind of a. over here, if I could focus in, you can see he has kind of this thing hanging, but it's kind of like a sash. It's not going all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a sash hanging down, which is supposed to be what the Israelite people didn't. Now
That's on a relief.
that's on a relief. It's like an old kind of drawing of Israelite people. Now show what the Phoenician people look like. Is that another book?
No, it's in this one.
All right, flip to the Phoenician people.
Oh, well, this is the Philistines.
Oh, let me see that. Okay, so the Philistines. Now look what the Philistines got. This is interesting. So that you can see the Philistines got these little things hanging down. You see? Can you see that? These are the Philistines, and they got these little string things hanging down off of their clothes. Philistines.
Phoenicians.
We'll see what the Phoenicians look like.
They got some Hamitic people looking very light.
Very alike.
Well, it's just on some white paper.
They don't have a, they don't have a relief on it, but this is the drawing of it. This is the drawing.
Oh.
But they don't have the relief on there.
Oh, they don't have the relief. But then now these ones is the Phoenician ones. Look at what they look like.
Yeah.
Them sons of Ham still
Say what? The sons of Ham look funny, huh?
No, I'm looking at the clothes. I'm not looking at the people.
The whitewashing.
I'm looking at the fringes that they have. See how I got
they
the.
got one brother on there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they got that's interesting.
Yeah, the girl on the end
all
look out of
fringes,
place.
Yeah. So they did it in the different ways.
This was the Israelite they have this again.
Oh yeah, so it's a better picture of the Israelite dish one, where it was really just kind of like this thing that hung down, where they put these things on it.
Right.
Like a belt type of.
Mm-hmm.
Boys,
So those were different than like with like the Phoenicians. You know what I'm saying? They had what a lot of brothers do today. Had the fringes all around the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting when you look at the language. When you look at the language, it's the alphabet's Phoenician, basically. It's identical.
The paleo.
The paleo. When you go back to the paleo Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
it's identical with the Phoenician. So the some of the customs and things were kind of pretty much similar. But I just thought it was interesting because when you looked at the ones that they were saying were the Israelite people, they had kind of like a sash looking thing,
Right.
and the Phoenicians had what you look at the Israelites today, they walk around looking like the Phoenicians, and then the Philistines had like the little strings, like you see with the 4 strings hanging down.
Right.
So it's just interesting seeing the different interpretations of the
Copycat.
the tassels.
I would say that what's interesting looking at it is that all the peoples in the ancient Near East wore their garments had fringes on them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was a thing that they did do.
Types. And so
I think the thing that sets it apart really is here. When we look at here, we see that it talks about the idea of doing it. But when we get the actual commandment over in Numbers 15 and 38, where it's adding that cord of blue to it, where we can see in the area everybody had on fringes.
Right.
everybody had fringes on their clothes. But then when you add in the cord of blue to it, it's kind of, I think that is more of the distinctive thing about it, as opposed to just having fringes, just in general. Because here it's not giving you the blue part. But again, we know that we can't look at a verse here and think that is taking away from a verse that we already have. It's just going to add to it. When we see where it says to make yourself tassels on the four corners of your garments, we have to revert back to the original commandment being given, where you were making sure that you had that cord of blue in the thing.
Right.
Was you going to talk about the stash that some people have now?
It's hard to. I'm gonna draw it. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use some of my excellent drawing skills.
Some of your skill.
Okay, let me erase this stuff.
Your excellent drawing skills.
Oh yeah, excellent drawing skills. So the sash now I'm not what we saw on the relief, but what I saw this person have, say he got on a belt, right? He got on the belt. This is his. I didn't mean to have that little loop right there.
Like a Shazam belt or something.
But that's his belt, right? And then on his belt was like this, almost like a bag, almost, that hang down on his belt, right? And then he had like the little. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sitting there going in depth into my
You can't see it.
My picture. Let me put it on. This is a terrible. I shouldn't have said that I have excellent drawing.
Oh snap!
Let me start again.
Too bad the pencil don't work on a Mac.
I know. That's if it did.
You'd be good.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so let me try again. All right, so again, here's the belt. Here's the belt. What? I can't. Just take her in there. Okay, so and then on the belt, you have this little thing, and on it, you'll have your fringes hanging down off of it.
Right. That look better.
And then, like, this person had like a little design on it. I think he might have had like a menorah or something on it. But when you look at the relief, those people, again, it was kind of like they had like this sash. The sash went around their waist, but then it hung down like if it was like a decorative karate belt or something. You know what I mean? And then at the ends it had the little
Kung Fu Hebrew.
like this with the little sash. These things, of course, being the tassels.
What's that? Samurai.
Okay, so all that being said, we know that again, if you was an Israelite, you had on your tassels, but not only did you have on the tassels, but you had that cord of blue. But then also again, we look at this word where it's talking about the word that's translated as corners or quarters is giving you this idea of being this thing that was a covering, right? So the thing that was covering you was supposed to have tassels on it. Right. And it made me think about the idea of the covering, first of all. When we look at some verses that use that word, kanaf, let's see. Ezekiel 16. Except I want to go out of this. Well, I'll leave it there so we can see what the word is. Ezekiel 16, verse 8. Now when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, thy time was the time of love, and I spread my skirt. Kanaf, I spread my skirt over. That's the word. Over thee and covered thy nakedness. It's taking this covering, this thing that covered, right? The skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness. Yea, I swear unto thee and entered into a covenant with thee, says Adonai Yahweh, and thou became mine. So here, this word kanaf is used in the idea of being the thing that stretches out and that covers. And, you know, when we think about what's going on in the context where the Most High is talking about Israel, how Israel had turned into kind of a harlot and was going out and was being with all of these different men, idolatry, the mixture. And then the Most High is coming and covering the nakedness of the shame of Israel with this covering. Now, when we think about the covering, the thing that covers over the nakedness, the thing that hides the shame. And then we think about the thing that covers the nakedness and hides the shame as being the thing that has this signifying qualities on it, which is again the tassels, the fringes, with the cord of blue. Now, when we think about the fringes and the cord of blue, when you think about what those things represent, again, everybody was wearing tassels in that area. But when we add the blue to it, it causes us to look to the heavens, right? It's the thing that causes us, again, when we go back to Numbers 15:38, the reason why you wore them was so that you could remember to keep the commandments.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it literally says,
that's
right?
The purpose, yeah.
Numbers 15:38. It literally says, 39, and it shall be unto you for a friend that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Yahweh and do them. Right? The thing when you look at it is going, so everybody was wearing fringes. If I looked at the Philistines or if I looked at the Phoenician people, they was going to have on fringes too. But I was going to have that cord of blue in it, and that was going to cause me to remember to keep the commandments. So again, when we think about the blue, we think about this, we think about where the commandments come from on high, where it causes us to think about the Most High. So, okay, so again, that was on the covering, the thing that covers the shame and the nakedness. When back over at Ezekiel 16 verse 8. So when we think about this, when we think about this covering, this thing that is the covering, and it's also this thing that causes us to remember to keep the commandments, we can really put these two things together. When we think about when we walk in the commandments, it's causing us to walk in the character of the Almighty. When we walk in His commandments, that is that causes us to be in a place of here again it's talking about covering the nakedness, covering the shame. So when we walk in the commandments, we're walking in a state of being covered, right? Of being of having our imperfections being concealed, right? The thing that you will see is us walking in righteousness, right? So the way that the Almighty came and removed the Israel that had turned to whoredom and idolatry, the Most High came and covered this harlot with His covering.
Right.
Psalms 36. Psalms 36, verse 7 says, "How excellent is thy loving kindness, O Elohim! Therefore the children of men put their trust under the shadow of thy kanaf, of thy wings."
Mm-hmm.
Right, this thing that covers.
This is the same thing.
Yeah, that's kanaf.
Yeah, tassels.
Well, it's not the tassels. That's the covering.
The covering.
That's the thing that the tassels is on. The thing that covers. That you're supposed to have the tassels on all of the corners. Again, it literally says 4 corners, but we're not talking about like a square.
Right.
Right. It's giving you that just kind of as it's kind of just describing it's kind of being all encompassing of a complete cover of the thing. It's not literally 4 corners, it's on the covering. But again, when we're thinking about this covering that has the fringes on it, again, we're able to look at this and think about again what this represents when we walk around and we have, not only are we looking at our fringes and it's causing us to keep His commandments, it's causing us to keep His commandments, but it also causes us to look at where our protection, where our covering comes from, right? The place where our shame is concealed comes from above, right? It's the Almighty, right? We're able to put our trust under the shadow of thy wings, this thing that reaches out and covers us. Okay, so the tassels, right? Let me go back to Deuteronomy.
I'm glad you're doing this, man. That saved me a lot of explaining.
22, who were we? 12. Yeah. Okay, so all right, so let's keep on going down here. Anybody have any thoughts about the tassels or any of that?
It represents who we are, what we're called to do, which separates us from the world, which is why we heed to those commandments and do such things and wear those things. And every time somebody asks me about that, when they see man, I have to go into this deep breakdown of this and that. So I'm gonna just make it real short and simple because y'all said so.
Well, I think it's good because just like we're able to look at it and it does something for us in terms of I remember when before Hissy got out of school, I guess he must have been in first grade, and he was being bad at school. Not bad, but just a little bit bad.
A little bit normally bad.
Just kind of like Hisky bad, not even just bad for him. So it was time for Hisky to start wearing his tassels, because it was something that, just like we look at the Tzipor, they remind us to keep the commandments. He needed a physical reminder to remind him to be able to act right.
Right.
When he was, when he was still at school. And I mean, we did that for him as a child, but that's what they were done. That's what they were made for us.
Right.
But as you're saying, it's also something if people are inquisitive enough to say, why you got what's up with your things hanging down off of you like that? It gives you opportunity to be able to share with people about your faith. So it can be multi-purpose in that way, where it's doing something for you as being this identifier as the people of Israel.
Right.
But it's also allowing you to be able to talk with people when they see you walking around with these. Oh, hold on, let me get that string that's hanging off.
That string. No, you know what? The other day, I'd be downtown and I got Muslim friends, et cetera, et cetera. So there's one brother who knew his stuff. I didn't even know he knew this. So one brother was saying to me, came to me and was like, "Assalamu alaikum, brother." I said, "Shalom alaikum." He was like, "Huh?" I said, "What makes you think I'm Muslim?" "Oh, because you got a kufi on." I said, "Don't you know they got that from us?" I said, "For real?" And then the other brother came and said, "Can't you see he got tassels on the side of his pants? You can't tell the difference." And he was like, "Well, what is that?" I said, "It's signifying us keeping the laws of Yah." I said, "If you notice that the Muslims, they carry the customs of us and Catholics." I said, they had prayer beads too, just like Catholics got rosary beads. I said, "Go figure." I said, "Find out the origin of Islam and you'll find a lot of stuff out too."
Yeah.
So that's just signifies our separation of such, because they don't have tassels and things like that, but we do. We might have the same head coverings, of course, and maybe the scarves and whatnot. But what separates us is the tassels and the fringes.
And the cord of blue.
And the cord of blue, which is very important.
Okay, so let me see.
But the Ashkenazis do not.
Yeah, they don't put the blue in theirs. All right, let's look at 22:13 down through let's see, 13 through 19.
When any man takes a wife, and she'll go into her, and she'll hate her, and she'll make abusive charges against her and bring an evil name on her and say, "I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find her a maiden."
That's another thing.
Then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the proof of the girl's maidenhood to the elders of the city at the gate. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, "I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he hates her. And see, he has made abusive charges against her, saying, I did not find your daughter a maiden. And yet these are the proofs of my daughter's maidenhood. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city, and the elders of the city shall take that man and punish him, and find him 100 pieces of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name on a maiden of Israel, and she is to be his wife. He is not allowed to put her away all his days."
Okay, very good. So
understand that.
When we look at this, we see this is the case here where the man is bringing forth this false accusation against his wife, right? In the event where he's saying that she wasn't a maiden, she wasn't a virgin when they got married, and then the parents is coming back with the proof and saying, wait a second, yes, she was. Now he has to pay double the
rate,
the price, which typically the price for a bribe would just have been 50 shekels, but he gets double because he tried to lie on her, and he can't never get rid of her now because he lied on her.
Why would she even want to be with him? And he did all that.
I know, try to sit up there and defame her name and everything else, and the family.
He done took her, took her.
Yeah, her maidenhood.
It's like, now what's she gonna do? Yeah, you stuck now. I guess because it ain't like she could be like, yeah, I don't want him no more. I want to move to the next man. He's gonna be like, what?
But she's only stuck because of the fact that he sat up there and bared false witness on her. Like, he made that false claim.
Well, what if the claim is true?
Huh. Well, if the claim is true,
let's see.
Verse 20. But if this charge is true, that the girl was not found a maiden, then they shall bring out the girl of the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done wickedness in Israel to whore in her father's house. Thus you shall purge the evil from the midst. But now see, that is an example where now the woman is the one who did the defrauding, where she pretended like she was something that she actually wasn't. And meanwhile, she was, going out and doing things, and not her father obviously wasn't knowing about it either, because it's saying that he shall bring
would that be an act of deception on her part?
Well, it was. That's why she was stoned, right?
Yeah. What if they put a lot of makeup on and disguise what they really look like, and have a man believing they found this precious jewel?
Well, it didn't have nothing to do with
she don't have nothing to do with the characteristics, though. She, just her character perfect. Her character is messed up, but she dressed herself up as this virtuous woman, and she's not.
Yeah, this ain't really talking about the character of the girl. It's talking about her.
I know that, man. I'm just
but I think that when we look at this, now, and just trying to think about it from a kind of a spiritual perspective, when we think about the idea of what's going on. In one case, we have the husband bringing this false accusation against the bride, and in the other case, we have the bride falsely representing herself. So when I think about the example here that's starting with verse 20, we have the girl who is falsely representing herself. I'm thinking about, thinking about it from a spiritual perspective. We think about how if you have these people who, because we now, walking in this way, we talked about the mixture, you know what I mean? We talked about being equally yoked. Mm-hmm. When we go and we those of us who are on the hunt, we go and we shall find these, we should find women who are from a spiritual perspective a maiden. right? And they're
physically a maiden.
well, I'm saying now I'm talking about it from a spiritual perspective. Not to say that you shouldn't go out and find you a maiden and a physical maiden as well, but I'm just thinking about it from a spiritual perspective and thinking about it in terms of purity, connection with the Father, right? Walking in faith. But if we was going to kind of think about it from this perspective here, you had this woman who was saying that she was a particular way, but at the end of the day, she was not that way. She was put away. Right. She was legally put away. Because of the fact that she wasn't what she put herself out there to be. But then on the flip side, you have, again, we're looking at it from a spiritual perspective. You have the man just trying to just make up this excuse, give these false accusations just as a way to get out. They brought the proof and said, "Nuh-uh, she is exactly who she says she is." Right. And her being that caused it to be impossible for that thing to be separated.
Right.
And it's not really a direct parallel, but when you think about thinking about it again, just from like a spiritual perspective, if there was going to be something that would be kind of that deal breaker, you can't have again, when we're thinking about this from a spiritual perspective, either side, you can't have people who are not a husband and wife that are not moving in the same direction.
Yeah,
right. You can't have this kind of a separation thing in the family, right? You can't have that mixture, right?
No,
you can't fulfill the path that the Most High will have for His people to be on when we're in this kind of unequally yoked situation. And again, this verse is talking about these physical things, but I'm just kind of thinking about it, kind of from a spiritual perspective in terms of having things in order and moving forward, on the same page.
I was thinking about even how the child, if you had a child that was, last week we was talking about the stoning of the children.
Mm-hmm.
You wasn't going to have anyone in your household who wasn't within the whole covenant perspective.
Right. And even when we're thinking about what we was thinking about this week in terms of starting off with the eggs and going into the mixture, you want to be able to have that part incorporated in the law of Yahweh is this continuance of His ways, right? There's a continuance of His ways, and he don't want the watering down of His ways. He don't want the mixture of these other things into His situation. And the reason why, we look at verse 22, to purge the evil from Israel. When we have these things that are countering the ways of Yahweh, these things have to be purged out.
I'll ask my question after the studies over. Offline.
Okay.
I have an offline question.
All right, thanks.
I don't want to be on record.
Offline question.
Yeah, I don't want to be on.
Okay, so let's keep on going. I want to get to the next chapter. When we look at let's see, 23. And let's just read 23 through 29.
When a girl who is a maiden is engaged to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city and shall stone them to death with stones. The girl, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst.
Mm-hmm.
But if a man finds the girl who is engaged in the field, and the man takes hold of her and lies with her, then only the man who lied with her shall die. But you shall do no matter to the girl. The girl has no sin worthy of death. The matter is like a man who races against his neighbor and murders him, a being. For he found her in the field, and she cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. When a man finds a girl who is a maiden, who is not engaged, and he says her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lied with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife, because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days.
Okay, so
You hear that, raper men? You will get stoned to death.
right. So when we look at these things, and again, we look at verse 29, we have to take verse 29 and couple it with another commandment, right? Because we have the same situation happen. Where is it? In Exodus 22, I think. It's not as if we have his command as similar to another command, and they cancel each other out. Let's see. Exodus 22, 16, 17.
She's saying that goes along with what's being said. Deuteronomy 23:17. She's right too.
16 and 17. When a man entices a maiden who is not engaged, it's just like what we've seen over in the other place, and lies with her, he shall certainly pay the bride price with for her to be his wife. So that's basically what we're seeing right here. I mean, over in the other chapter. If the father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of the maiden. Right? So we don't have this added part over here in Deuteronomy, but again, we can't forget that it exists. Right? So what he's supposed to do is go ahead and pay the bride price and her be his wife. Right after they come to an agreement with the father. But it says in verse 17 of chapter 22 of Exodus, if the father absolutely refuses, where he don't want for this man to have his wife, he still is owed the price, but he don't get the wife. So
you gotta pay for something you can't have.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he didn't have no business taking it in the first place. So when we look at this, we look at this and we see kind of the order of family. We see the father and his relationship to his daughters. We see how people don't have the right or the ability to just go and be dealing with these women without dealing with their coverings, right? And this is important for us as we come back to Torah and getting our personal lives and our family lives together. Getting down into those second generations when we're dealing with our kids, right? As being in the truth and then growing our kids up in the truth. We need to have these people understand that you not going to just be coming around here talking to my daughter.
Talk to my,
Right.
Or my wife.
And we're gonna have our daughters understanding that these young men ain't just gonna be coming around talking to them without going through the proper channels. Right. These are things that we have to bring back into our lives. You know, we can't have our daughter just going out here just talking to any old body.
That's right.
Without first coming around and talking to daddy.
Talking to daddy.
Daddy
got to give him a third degree, huh? That's
Right.
where the third degree come from.
And
You want with my daughter. But you know what though? I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of brothers that's in this truth that's actually sharing the word, teaching the word, that's married, but turn around and try to take what belongs to you as your wife or the one you're courting. Because quite a few times I was told some brothers was creeping through my garden trying to take my rose, but I wasn't worried about it. My rose brought them. Yeah, when I put that up there about that brother was creeping through I never said his name or anything, but the brother's married, you know, and then the requests he was making toward my girl, it was like, I was like, huh? So I told her, well, it's your job to put him in check. She said, oh, I did. I've done that. And I appreciated that. But that just goes to show you, man, that a brother will covet. Scripture wouldn't say it if it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is that a lot of people that's out here and saying that your brother ain't really your brother. You know what I mean? You got a lot of people who's out here and they doing things and they might got on some fringes, but they not Israel.
They got the right costume.
You know what I mean? They got all the clothes on, right, but they not functioning out of the character of the Almighty, right? Because we reading Torah right here, right?
Right.
We're not even talking about somebody's wife. We talking about somebody who is betrothed to somebody. So somebody who's moving towards becoming somebody else's wife. That person's off limits. Right. And if we doing things according to the Torah, then, we shouldn't have these problems. Much more, you hear about these things happening all the time with people's literal wives being taken by these people inside of these groups and all of this stuff. And
for the word's sake, too. For scriptural knowledge sake, they use it the wrong reason, man. I tell them straight up.
It's a perversion. It's a perversion.
Scriptures maybe better than us. So why wouldn't his workers do as well? I mean, the scriptures talk about these people coming within our grasp, within Israel, within our presence. So the average learner and the babe in the truth do not recognize that, so they attach to them thinking that they got, the scriptural knowledge and they're so Elohimly or godly that I need to get with them and study under them until they find out, that even Chester molester give children candy. So it's in the power of persuasion, and they still wrong for that because that's not a righteous way. Right.
So it's people out here that's perverting these righteous ways, and people are suffering as a result of all of this because all we got to do is look into the Torah and we have all of these things in here laid out for us, and it's not hard to find. So we got to be wary of these people who's out here and they sitting up here now. I'm saying that from a principally speaking, unless I'm dealing with, I'm married, so it don't apply to me.
Right.
But unless I'm saying if I was a single person, I shouldn't be having these type of intimate type relationship conversations or dealings with people who I'm not trying to make my wife.
Right.
Because it just, I think it's out of order. It's out of order to kind of deal with, as a man, to deal with women in a so-called kind of I don't know how I don't know this is just my I'm just gonna put my I'm gonna put a little caveat here. This is my personal thoughts on the matter. That as a man, I don't know what the reasoning is behind having kind of these plutonic relationships with women. Because of the fact of I feel like it's kind of I feel like it's just playing with fire, I would say. Because you know, as a man, you know, you're a human being. And you know, from a scientific standpoint, you know, the attraction that you have with people of the opposite sex is it's a sexual attraction. And that's I mean, that's just from us. We were made that way so that we'll sit up here and procreate with each other. Yeah. All right. So I think that there has to be boundaries set. You know, we have to have boundaries set up where, you know, we aren't going to be dealing with as men dealing with women or women dealing with men, because it's setting up problems, I would say. So we have these forums that we participate in, and you have these women, you know, throwing themselves before all of these men, right? And the men are like, you know, taking full advantage of all of this, building their spiritual quote unquote harems with all of these women. Women need to just go and talk to some women that can teach them about something instead of dealing with men.
You're talking about unmarried.
I'm talking about unmarried. Well, I'm talking about women in general.
Women in general.
If some woman's going to try to talk to me, I'm going to say, first thing I'm going to say is, where your husband at? And then the second thing I'm going to say is, let me connect you with my wife. And you can talk to her about whatever you need to talk about. Because I'm not going to sit up here and I could be just sitting up here saying nothing but what the Bible's saying. Then she could just be like, oh, he's such a spiritual man.
He's for me.
You know, the little birdies flying around, right? The little birdies flying around above her head with hearts and stuff. I don't want no parts of that, right? And when we look at this, we see this thing that's really, I mean, it's talking about this man taking these women and so on and so forth. But at the foundation of it, we do see the idea of kind of how a family is structured. And when he makes these transgressions, he pays the father, right? He's given the father what's due him because he took something that was his. So I'm just saying, when we look at these things, we got to be able to look at these things and get back to kind of the principles and the fundamentals that we see inside of these scriptures and recognize that there's boundaries. And we need to know about these boundaries and respect these boundaries, because you got these people sitting up here and, you know, they just, it's inordinate.
So when a man wants to speak to a woman, he should say, who should I speak to in order to talk to?
If there is such a person, I think that they should deal with that aspect, at least try to find out what they need to do.
Like, for example, you talk to my mother and my father.
Right.
We had two different conversations.
Right. So I'm saying that according to Torah, These are the steps.
Because there's accountability.
These are the steps that we need to have. Yes.
If somebody oversteps the boundary, then the person needs to be held accountable.
It's somebody more than just you and the other person involved in all of this, instead of you just sitting up here, creeping in on these people's and their little, because these things are the social media, these things is going on all over the place.
Yeah.
And these people sit up here, and you have all of these little connections with all of these people.
Chat groups.
Yeah. And
chatting and all that.
We need to get away from these things, and we need to get into some type of there needs to be accountability and boundaries.
And people like literally meet up at different like Sukkot sites. Like they literally meet up there.
Right.
And it's like, because it's like they've seen each other on social media or whatever. And it's like, it's to me, the groups, those type of events are good for meeting other Hebrews and things of that nature. But what I've seen within the last year is people like kind of luring people into coming to different events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In order, like they want the woman to travel to them in order so that they can have relations with the women that they're trying to lure into it. And it's like this spiritual like event, but they're not looking at it from a spiritual perspective.
Because these people out here carnal.
So there's like all this, there's like a carnality, but I don't remember this in say 2001, 2002. If people was talking about meeting up at a retreat, it was like a holy thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like a spiritual thing. It wasn't like, let's meet up here and act carnally. And so it's like people can't, just because I tell women this all the time, just because a man says shalom on Facebook doesn't make him a Hebrew.
Sure don't.
Just because he says shalom, types in the letters, don't make him to be a spiritual person. So
Shalom.
You gotta actually there gotta be tests.
That's why I tell him.
And not only that, but don't just take his word for it that he's a Hebrew. You gotta get 2 to 3 witnesses who know him and his lifestyle day in and day out before you can even say he's a Hebrew. I don't care how many posts you put on Facebook. Give me 2 or 3 people who can vouch for your character and can vouch for the fact that you every single Shabbat is keeping the Shabbat. Every single holy day is keeping holy. That there's no pork in your cabinets. Because these men even have pork. I'm just saying. They want to say shalom and they lure the women in, but nobody's like asking for witnesses on your character. If I go in for a job interview, I got to give character references.
Yeah, you do.
Right? And they can even call those character references up and say, can you tell me if Michelle Lewis is a good person? Isn't going to rob our company of all our money, all our assets. But these women out here, they'll just somebody say shalom, and they all in love.
It's that easy.
That's all you gotta do.
Come to my house.
More often.
Come to my house. No, come to my house, and we'll put up tents in my backyard.
Yeah.
And they'll go and travel, pay airfare, get on airplanes, and go. And these men will have sex with these women. And then after that, they don't know them anymore.
I know. So
Facebook page shut down.
Not under their belt.
How did the Facebook page is shut down after you done went over and celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles in this grown man's backyard in his tent? I'm not talking about going to an event. I'm talking about going to their house. All I'm saying is that it is a dangerous situation out here. And if women aren't careful and we don't make sure our daughters are protected from these people who are just literally like taking advantage.
That's why I say watch that zipper hanging from their chin.
All I'm saying is character references is a big thing to me. I say if a company is going to have character references to hire me, before I talk to you, I need some character references.
Yeah, well,
I got character references on Tony. I saw him in person.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You gave him the 3rd degree?
I mean, the truth of the matter
It was Tony. Now, we had a courtship where we didn't kiss. There was 0 kiss until he gave me my ring.
Right, I understand.
And said, "Will you marry me?" Right, Tony?
Right. Yeah.
If you marry me, woman.
Yeah. So hold on.
All I'm saying is that people gotta have like.
It's a problem. It is a problem, and people
Right.
need to understand that it is a problem, and people need to be on the lookout for these people who are just kind of
Predators.
yeah,
They
because
still have the
that's what it
Negroid
is.
mentality, though, you know? I mean, though they are Israel because of nation-wise, but that doesn't make them righteous. That's why I told my sisters, my biological sister, look, man, look and see if you see that zipper hanging from the chin. All you gotta do is unzip it, and you'll see the wolf in the sheep's clothing. It's because they portray themselves as these righteous people, but their only intent is to get in your private parts.
And you know the problem is that people aren't really experiencing Messiah, right? They only gaining information, right? And that's not gonna never get you nowhere. So you have these people who started living a certain lifestyle, but never solidified a relationship with Messiah, and therefore, you know, they just treating this just like it's just another way to get another get to another pool of individuals.
Right. Yeah.
And then, you know, you enter in the whole multiple wife thing, and then, you know, that's a whole other level, right? What you gonna say, Chris?
Oh, goodness. I forgot.
Well, I will say Proverbs 14:7 will give them a warning. It says, go from the presence of a foolish man without perceiveth not in him the lips of knowledge. A fool will expose themselves. So will a court jester. Eventually, they will expose themselves because you'll see that they're not bearing fruit. Their only intention is to eat yours. You know, they're not trying to help you grow your tree of learning. They're not trying to help you come to the grips of God or Yeshua. Their only concerns is to rip you apart.
But what if I don't know what fruit to look for?
That's when you're in bad shape.
But that's where you at. If you got somebody who don't know nothing, they coming into a situation, they could be manipulated because they don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for. You got people sitting up here describing wickedness as righteousness, and so I could see that you doing these quote unquote wicked things, but they're being kind of glossed over and described as righteous things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that, you know, a lot of women today are, you know, just silly women laden with sins, and they're being led to the slaughterhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that comes from, you know, them not having, you know, a man in their life who, you know, kind of is like protecting, you know, the flock.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that father figure is that person that's supposed to be protecting, you know, his household and making sure that none of them are led astray or taken by wolves.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think when that strong man has been removed,
right,
it allowed a lot of these
fair game for everybody.
Yeah, right.
So that's why I'm saying that we now, you know, in this kind of first generation people who start walking in this way, for the generation behind us, we got to make it, you know, we got to set that foundation of how the family's supposed to be, and just continue to teach people that way, because you know, these women out here being taken advantage of, and you know, as we see in the scriptures, you know, it's, you know, that's against the Torah. All right, so let's read these last let's see, the last 2 or 3 6 verses here. 6, 7, 9 verses. Let's read from 1 to 9. We'll go over this and then.
All right, 6. Sort of 2 or 1.
1 through 9.
He who is wounded by crushing of testicles, whose penis is cut off, shall not enter into the community of Yah. A Mazner shall not enter the community of Yah. Even a 10th generation of his shall not enter the community of Yah. An Amorite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yah. Even a 10th generation of them shall not ever enter the assembly of Yah, because they did not meet you with bread and water or the way when you came out of Mistral, Egypt. And because they hired against you Balaam, son of Bora, from Pithor of Amram, Naraam, to curse you. But Yah, your Elohim, refused to listen to Balaam. Or Yah, your Elohim, turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yah, your Elohim, loves you. Do not seek their peace nor their good all your days forever. Do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mistran, because you were a stranger in his land. The children of the 3rd generation born to them do enter the assembly of Yah. Did I finish?
Oh yeah, just read.
I'm cleaning this in the can.
Oh wait. Yeah, just eight's good. Okay, very good. So when we go back here and we talk about this one who is wounded in the stones or is castrated. This, hold on, New American Standards says no one who is emasculated or has his male organ cut off shall enter into the assembly of Yahweh.
They shall enter or
shall not
Oh, okay, shall not
enter into the kingdom of Yahweh. So when we think about this, again, this version here says emasculated, right? It talks about, it caused me to think about this kind of agenda, right? That we see in terms of kind of blurring the gender lines and, causing men to kind of operate in all these feminine traits, right? But here we see now we live in a time where this kind of thing is just done by just teaching males these kind of feminine ways, but how it was physically done was literally castrating people and kind of taking away your manliness, your testosterone, just being taken away.
Don't they say that Daniel may have been
Daniel?
Because when they went to captivity, they was making
you can't it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
Well, wasn't I'm thinking of mixing up stories.
So you mixing up stories like Medea do, huh?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of what's his name? Who the guy's wife tried to rape.
The guy's wife tried to.
Yeah, remember? She pulled his garb off.
Was that Joseph? Yeah.
Emotion, no.
Oh, Potiphar's wife. When he ran and fled from her, he got the heck up out of here.
Yeah. Okay, so hold on, take him. Okay, so we see this here. This person shall not enter into the community. Okay, so what do we say? What do we say then when we look at 56?
For thus says Yah to the eunuchs, who guard my Sabbath and have chosen what pleases me, and are holding on to my covenant. To them I shall give in my house and with my walls a palace, a place, and a name better than that of the sons and daughters I gave them, an everlasting name that is not cut off.
No, that's good. So we're talking about who here now, this eunuch who guards the Shabbats, the Sabbaths, and has chosen and have chosen what pleases me and are holding on to my covenant. These eunuchs that are walking in righteousness, to them I shall give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of the sons and daughters, and give them an everlasting name that is not cut off. So we see that, but then we see what we just read, right? No one who is emasculated or has his male organ cut off shall enter the assembly of Yahweh. So first we see this place where you have this kind of separation of these ones who, it don't say eunuch in Deuteronomy, but that's what a eunuch is, right?
Right.
But over here in Isaiah, it's talking about a eunuch that's following after righteousness is going to be rewarded as a result of it. What do we say about that? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
You said the eunuch is what?
He's following y'all's commandments.
Says the eunuch, this eunuch here, it says, I shall give to them, to that eunuch, I shall give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off.
Everlasting name is not cut off.
Well, before they were excluded from the assembly of Yahweh, you know, if they were ones who were emasculated, wounded in the stones, male organ cut off.
So this isn't, you know, you think this is actual physical eunuchs and not people who have basically, you know, become eunuchs to serve.
Which one you talking about? Isaiah?
Yeah.
Isaiah literally says eunuch.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I'm connecting it because a eunuch is somebody who is So we're over in Deuteronomy, it's describing the thing. And then over in Isaiah is naming the thing that it described before. So I'm just saying, like, what do we say then in regards to this?
They'll be blessed.
So is this prophetic? Or is this you think this is like talking about right now?
Well, it was prophetic back in Isaiah's time whenever he wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever he was given, for thus says Yahweh, it says right there. Whenever he got the message from the Almighty, it's prophetic. Yes, to a time that was different from the time when they was.
Right.
But the thing that it's talking about, again, the thing that it's talking about is dealing with a group of people who was
Persecuted,
alienated, right?
But the way
You shall not enter, period. It's just
the way it's written is almost as if he's talking about those who have, you know, chosen him over, you know, the pleasures of the flesh. You know, eunuchs who guard my Sabbaths and have chosen what pleases me and are holding on to my covenant.
right, but that style of choosing is something that was going to automatically put you outside of the assembly of Yahweh. I could say that I'm going to be celibate, right? Where that's one thing. But if I'm going to go through this action that's actually making me physically unable, it seems like that's a whole other level.
Or now, most of the time, wasn't that done to a person as opposed to
them doing it themselves?
Yeah.
That's what
like like
yeah. Well, when you went into these other nations, they would sit up there and do it to you.
Yeah,
that's what the Muslims did to our people.
But the King James says bruised in the stones, as if maybe you was, you had like some kind of tragic accident or something.
What'd you say? Muslims did what, Chris?
But what do it say? What do it say in I think it covers both things. If no one who is emasculated or has his members cut off. So I think even if you was to say like maybe you got captured by some people and they did that to you, it still excludes you from entering into the assembly of Yahweh.
Somebody who might have had cancer down in that area.
I don't know how they dealt with cancer back in the
testicular cancer.
That stuff just came out. All I'm saying is that when we look at the things that we see that the Most High has put into place for people kind of looking forward, like in the times of the scriptures looking forward, we continually see the Most High making ways for people where at one point there wasn't no way. When we're talking about the creation of this nation of Israel, there were certain things that it just had to be that way, just period. Right. And again, if we look back, if we can compare this, to the bird with the eggs, where now you have this individual who he has no potential for continuance. His potential for continuance is gone. Right. So as a functional man, he's not that, right? He can't, he's forever a dysfunctional man. Right. So there wasn't a place for him in the assembly.
That's your something real quick.
Good.
All right. For thus says Yah unto the eunuchs. All right. Even unto the eunuchs who have, have been excluded from the privilege of the people of Yah and who have been regarded as a separate and degraded people, they shall be admitted to the same privileges as others. Now, that keep my Sabbath, the word is used here in the plural, though the weekly Sabbath is probably particularly intended. It may be, however, that the word is used to represent or faithfulness, observance in general, and choose the things that pleases me, who will be willing to sacrifice their own pleasures and preferences to those things that which Yah choose and which he delights, and to take hold of his covenant, hold fast or steadily maintain his covenant, or on the meaning of the word covenant itself, that they keep it, no matter what, we should keep it. For in other words, even if they do that and they be blessed, just imagine how much more we'll be blessed if we follow the full laws, if we follow what he's telling us to do. We should be blessed too, keeping his covenant.
Yeah, I think what we learn from this is, again, like I was saying, is that when we see, like, even when we look at what we know as what we call the old covenant or the law of Moses, within it, when we look at it, we see and understand that there's a necessity for something greater to come, right? Because the old covenant as it is, as the Bible tells us, is not able to make us be righteous, right? It's only causing us or giving us ways to do righteous things, but it doesn't make us righteous. So, but the thing that we look forward to, I'm saying from an old covenant perspective, the thing that we look forward to is the new covenant, which actually does make us righteous from an internal perspective, right? So when we look at this in particular, and thinking back to what we talked about earlier in terms of mercy and compassion, chesed, right, where the Most High is able to look at these individuals and not deal with the individual based on their physicality, but deal with them in spite of that, right? So when we think about this kind of physical deformity, whether it be something natural or unnatural, this thing was a thing that was able to separate you from the assembly of the Almighty, the way that the nation was structured at that time. But when we look and see what the Most High has done in terms of affording these possibilities for those who at one point had no possibilities, it's just an example of who the Almighty is, and seeing his character manifest in terms of making a way for those who previously didn't have a way.
Right.
Mercy.
Right. Chesed. But now, even when you say grace, it just makes me want to just add to it, because we see that this person here, had a heart to do the will of the Almighty.
Right.
Right. It's different from these people just
lip service.
Just, well, not only lip service, but not having a life. This person had a life that was exemplary of, walking in righteousness, not just, living however.
Right.
Okay, let's look at some of these.
Living a vida loca.
Let's look at some of the other ones before we get done here. Okay, so the next one we see is this person of what the mamzer. This is a person of illegitimate birth. No one of illegitimate birth shall enter the assembly of Yahweh. None of his descendants, even to the 10th generation. So when we see that, here, let me go back over. When we see this, her 10th generation is basically talking about forever.
Wow, was that a mistake?
Okay, so let me see. Where is that verse? Nehemiah 13:1. Nehemiah 13:1 says, on that day was read from the book of Moshe in the hearing of the people, and in it was found written that an Ammonite or Moabite should not come into the assembly of Elohim forever. Over here, verse 3, it says, even the 10th generation. Right? So I'm just saying, bringing up Nehemiah, because when we think about this whole idea of the 10th generation, the thought process is forever. Right. Even though 10 sounds like, well, after 10, 11 should be good. Right. Yeah. Right. But yeah, so I'll just talk. Yeah, it's done.
So Masmer.
Right. So we want to go back to this. Yeah.
Is a person born from certain forbidden relationships or from like incest or the descendants of such person, masmur status is not synonymous with illegitimacy, since it does not include children whose mothers were unmarried.
Yes. The idea that we see with this whole mamzer thing is the product of, as it says here, the product of a prohibited union.
Right.
So when you have a child that comes as a result of something that didn't have no business happening in the first place,
Yeah.
that's someone. So like, for instance, if you was to say that you was going to go ahead and marry a Canaanite when you wasn't, the scripture said you wasn't supposed to marry a Canaanite, then that is a prohibited union, right?
Yeah.
Or
the birth of taboos was a prohibited. Nimrod and Semiramis.
So
wasn't there people who married Canaanites though? Wasn't there some Canaanite mixture?
Yeah, after the commandment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there probably was, but all I'm saying is that when we see this word here that dated and the scriptures don't translate it, because it's kind of this word that they're not even totally clear as to what this actually means. Like the King James says bastard, I think. This version, I have this New American Standard, says illegitimate, where it's the idea I think that is really coming across is the product of this. I mean, illegitimate, we think about illegitimate as far as people not being married and have kids or whatever. But I think the idea of it is just these prohibited or inordinate unions where incest is one of those, right? Or again, these forbidden nations. You wasn't supposed to marry these forbidden, those 7 nations, right? The Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, or Girgashites, and right there saying them all. Right? So so those were those people. So I know in my little etymological dictionary of these words here, it says that this word, the root of this word, mamzer, the root of this word is a word that means to be rotten. So it's kind of just something that is not, that's tainted, that's impure. So we know that we was able to go, and again, we looked at this last week. You was able to go to other nations. You was able to go to other nations and take other nations as your wife, but certain ones you wasn't able to do that. And if you did do that, that will put you, the offspring would be this mamzer. Or if you had some other type of prohibited union, it would be. I'm just saying all that just to say, when we think about, just thinking about the King James, where it just says bastard, when you think about the idea of the parents not being married and then that making you a mamzer, I don't think that's what this is saying here, is all I'm saying.
Well, I understand masmur in Hebrew, even in the Yiddish, is bastard too.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that, so this word this word here, let me see. This word here is of foreign origin, but they think that the root of it again is this manzer.
Mm-hmm. And if you notice,
mazar, which means to be rotten.
and in the scripture, it does talk about a bastard not being in the kingdom.
That's what we just read. That's this verse right here.
Oh, I was gone when you read that. And if you notice that even Hitler called the so-called Jewish people in his book, and on page 132 of the Nazis' World War II, he even called them Bolterd, which means bastard. No, and he also said, "Oh, I was doing God's work."
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that we have to take it outside of kind of the context of what we think about with that word, where it's kind of an all-encompassing thing. All inordinate unions are, the things that's causing you to be in this category again, even to the 10th generation, which is, forever.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the Ammonites and the Moabites, which is interesting because we do have this whole idea of Ruth was the Moabite, right?
Hello?
And we see where she fits into the situation, right? So it's interesting when you see these commands, putting them in a context and seeing where, where they fit in, because we talking about the building of a nation, the creation of the nation, right? Where we see where these unions are prohibited, and we can understand why. But then when we look at the very lineage where Yeshua even came from, we have this one of these prohibited unions in the Messiah's lineage. So I think that again, when we think about the differences between the old and new covenant, right? I think we got to look at things like this, where it's kind of not, it's not an exact kind of continuation of the old covenant and the new covenant, because you can't have you can't be a eunuch.
That's why
You can't be a Moabite. You just can't be. Inside of the old covenant.
Inside of the new covenant, you can.
Well, Yeshua himself comes through. There's Moabite in his genealogy.
Right.
It says the 10th generation, and we've seen how that's really forever. So they didn't want that in that. We don't even got to go that far, right? That's where David, right?
So we
don't even got to go all the way to Yeshua. We can stop at David.
We said that we void out commandments.
I'm just saying we can see where there's been alterations. I don't know. I don't want to use that word. I don't want to use that word, but we can see where there's shifts.
Extra stuff in the back.
Either that.
Extra flavor, right?
Or I'm thinking it's either that or possible translation or misunderstanding. Possibly. I mean,
I don't know how to change. Like, I don't know how you, unless we say that's not really Moabite, but it goes beyond even saying.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that part. You know, I was kind of
So why would he exclude like Moabite and then that being she was lineage?
Well, there's a whole big
And
debate
Moab-
on that.
yeah.
Whether Ruth was an Israelite or not, and they just called the land of Moab, and there was Israelites throughout that land. There's a whole big discussion on that.
Yeah, which to me I don't understand, because the whole point, like you're if she's not a Moabite, then like why is that the way that she's described throughout her description?
The Moabites and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
like it's something that's kind of put at the forefront.
Right.
So either I gotta
know to make no mistake.
Yeah. So I mean,
Moabites is Lot's people, right?
Yeah.
Without it, that's incest.
So it's like doubly, right?
Yeah.
So you had the fact that they're the product of incest, and then you also had the fact that this thing that I'm trying to use this as a they have this thing because they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Bilam, son of Beor. So they it's like three things that they did that's against them.
Hey, you know.
So then they go to the New Testament where it say not one jot or one tittle for pass from the law.
But before we even get to that point, even when we look at the eunuch, in terms of, we can look at the same verse where it talks about the eunuch first, and then it talks about the nations after that. So all I'm saying is that we see where there were restrictions on Israel and his people originally, and as time went on, we see where he makes more allowances for people who were at one point forbidden to come in. Mercy, not just just random mercy, not just kind of just throwing it all over the place. Those people still had to come the same way everyone else did, but there was a allowance for those who were on the outside who didn't have the ability to come in.
Whether they were
before we even get to the New Testament, just from a prophetic standpoint and with the prophets looking forward, where there was going to be this thing that was going to not necessarily even having it spelled out necessarily, because inside of the Old Testament context, hearing about the ability for a eunuch and the nations to be at a level that's higher than sons and daughters, you can't even understand how that could even be possible.
I know, right?
At a place where you're before Messiah, right? In Isaiah, we don't know how that's going to all be played out. So you hearing this thing from a prophetic standpoint about all of these allowances of these formerly kind of banished and exiled groups, from a prophetic standpoint, outside of the New Testament. New Testament didn't even happen yet.
Well, I could see, you know, the whole eunuch situation because it's like, all right, all your life, you basically been kept outside. You wasn't allowed in,
Right.
but you still kept. You know what I mean? You still chose him. You still kept his Shabbat.
Yeah.
You still, you know what I mean, followed the commandments. So you're going to get that reward of being greater because you've been on the outside all your life. But you still showed and proved that, you know, you was about
His business.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you get that extra portion?
Right.
Because you didn't get no portion at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understandable.
But the Gentile also the Gentile. Yeah, verse 6, Isaiah 56.
Well, it's the same thing with them. It's the same
Yeah,
thing
it's
with
the
them.
same thing.
I mean, they never, you know what I mean? They weren't allowed in. You know
Right, and we just seen that's what we're looking at here. These certain ones who was just totally excluded.
I mean, and look how we acted. We was the ones in there, and look how we acted. Like fools.
Israel is the things that Israel has done, put Israel in a place where where the Most High could have literally said on multiple occasions that, forget about Israel. Right. All he ever had to do was just take one righteous individual and just go from there, and he would still be true to what he said to Abraham. That's all he ever had to do. He could always have just said, forget this people altogether. But again, looking at all this together, we see the character of the Almighty, where he is making a decision, right? Where he's going to have mercy on who he has, he will have mercy. That's what he said. And we see how that's executed. Not to say that he's going against himself or his law or his commandments, but what he's doing is showing his character. He's showing you his character, which is about chesed, which is about mercy.
And what he chooses to do with positions and place where he places people is his business. It ain't our business to be like, upset.
Yeah.
Because somebody's gonna be above us. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we should be just worried about getting it right.
Yeah. And it's not as if it is something that is to me, when I look at it, it's not something that's contradictory. It's something that is expanding on what I already see as being exhibited as his character.
Right. Tell me this though. Could this be saying that the Gentile and the eunuch are going to be placed above those sons and daughters who ain't even going to make it in? Could it be saying that? Not saying that they're going to be above those who are keeping the commandments and the covenants, but those who don't. Like, I'm going to give you a name above sons and true sons and daughters, but those true sons and daughters ain't gonna make it in.
I don't think it's saying that. I don't think that. To me, I don't understand what. I mean, that's not really I'm gonna make you better than in a place that's better than my dog.
My dog? What?
I mean, essentially, that's what that would be. Like, if I'm talking about the sons and daughters who not going to be in, then they're still on the outside. So I can't describe a place and make it sound like it's this good place when in actuality it is
a good place.
It's really not a good place.
It is a good place because the sons and daughters think that they're gonna make it in. They think that they are, gonna make it in, but they ain't. And then they're gonna watch Gentiles walk in, and they on the outside.
Well, I think that it can't be on the outside because this, where it says in verse 5, I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. So they're going to be in a position that's not a cut off position. It's going to be a position that's I'm not there. But it says in verse 5 of Isaiah 56, in that same verse, where the name that they're giving, this everlasting name, it shall not be cut off. So I don't think it's a relatively good position. I think it's a good position, not just relative to.
Oh no. I'm not saying that it's like, you know, like, oh, you're going to have a low position. No, I'm saying that they're going to be counted amongst the rest of the saints.
Yeah.
Not they're going to be above the saints.
No, I thought you were saying they're going to be above the sons and daughters that don't make it in.
Well, yeah, that's the case.
Yeah,
the case is that
yeah,
get the same name as the saints. You know what I mean? They're going to get the same portions as the saints. It's not like they're going to be like come in and the Gentiles is going to be above the saints and Most High. Like, yeah, I'm gonna give you a name above. You know, they're going to be counted amongst.
Yeah.
But the natural seed who ain't going to be counted amongst the saints, he's going to basically, you know, give them their slot.
I don't think I understand what you're saying about the.
We'll get to
it. Yeah.
So we don't digress.
Okay, so let's keep on going, right? Verse. I'm gonna drop down to verse 7. Verse 7. Do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mitzrayim, because you were a stranger in his land. The children of the third generation born to them do enter the assembly. So we had this idea here of the loathing of the Edomite or the Egyptian, and a specific command to not to loathe the Edomite or the Egyptian. So in the event that we were to identify who the Edomites were, we wouldn't be able to hate those individuals, whoever they might be.
That's extremely difficult because, I mean, the Edomites are pretty much, they're not pretty much, but they have been behind the scenes of a lot of the plights that we have had as a people.
However, be that as it may,
yeah, I know, right?
Is a literal command right here that says, "Do not loathe an Edomite."
Yeah,
so, regardless of what it is that they've been doing, whoever they are, whatever it is that they've been doing, it don't give us the right to abhor them.
I mean, because if you look at it,
Ta'ab.
It only makes sense because, yes, Edom was the vessel that was used to do what Yahweh wanted to be done to us, right? And so, if anyone we should loathe, it should be ourselves,
right?
For not keeping His commandments and for not, doing His will. So, if anybody we should have that hatred towards, it should be ourselves.
But he's not even saying it like that, though. I see what you're saying, and what you're saying is right. But that's kind of an added. That's like an added reason not to hate him, because here is just saying that he is your brother. It's not even going to the fact that the things that have been done to you by him is really your fault anyway. That's like another reason why you wouldn't hate him. That's like an added thing. He's not even saying that. He's saying because he's your brother. Period. Yeah. So again,
so should we not hate Americans too? Because
Well,
in their land too.
all I'm saying is that I'm not getting into who these people are,
Dude, Esau.
the Edomite
Right.
or the Egyptian, because I could know them or don't. But all I'm saying is that if I was to say that I knew who they was,
Mhm.
I couldn't at the same time detest them like some people do.
Right.
Some people say that I know who these people are, but at the same time they're detesting them, which is an explicit contradiction of these people. Now, if you talk about America, where we could put them into the category of somebody who will be doing the same thing, I don't know if I could put them in the same category. But if I was going to say that, like we talked about this before in terms of how we look at our money and we have all this Egyptian stuff on our money.
Right.
Right. And we talk about going to Egypt again in ships, except we're over here, where Egypt kind of being this place of bondage, and not necessarily literally Egypt, but like over here being Egypt. If we're gonna look at it like that, then we could say that this place is Egypt, but still, it don't exempt us from detesting these people. Like when we exhibit the character of the Almighty, hate is not part of that makeup. It don't belong there, right? It don't exist in the character of Yahweh. He's giving you, like when we talking about the contemporaries that's getting these commandments. This is like the arch enemies.
Right, definitely.
You know what I mean? This is like the Thanos.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Don't hate them. Arch enemy. Don't hate them. And again, and then the reason why is because, like, even when we look back in terms of the whole idea of mercy, right, is finding the beauty. You and placing value on the thing.
So what you saying?
I'm saying mercy is keeping you from doing it, from doing this hatred.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what the definition of it is finding the beauty and putting value on a thing. And that's what's causing you to be able to act towards it that way in the first place.
Because we see that.
Because it's your brother. Because you was a stranger too.
They are.
Or you could take it to what Chris said. They're just doing to you what's owed to you because of what you did. All of that is
everything was set in motion. Now they took it a little further than they were supposed to.
Did they?
Yeah, that's what the
scripture
says.
Too far.
Yeah, they went too far. But still,
but you wouldn't be there in the first place.
Wouldn't be there in the first place.
So all I'm saying is that you saying that is placing value in that, finding the beauty, and that's allowing you to do that mercy thing. Because again, you dealing with something that's not based on them, right, but it's based on you.
Power over me because of me and my ancestors.
Now, in a sense, it don't say. Now, when I look at it, okay, the word breaking down, disgusting, to hate something, but for instance, you go down to some of the thing. Okay, to abhor, to be abominable, do abominably, to detest in a ritual sense and ethical sense. I'm looking at it too as like an action towards them. So me personally, I feel like I don't gotta like them, like on a sense that they your enemy. Like we know that we created enemies by not keeping the commandments, but
Look up that word abhor.
It's right here.
Yes, that's
To
Oh yeah, okay.
To
be abhorrent, to abhor, to be abhorrent, to do abominably. The word expresses a strongly detestable activity or logical response to such an activity.
Right. So it's like an action that you put in place to say, oh, I'm going to retaliate. I'm going to go commit a violent act or anything.
Okay, so think about Yeshua then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Yeshua brings us up to a higher level in terms of when we think about murder or adultery, we think about the actual act. But what about that thought process that's in your mind that's going on, which is even bringing you to that place of doing the act in the first place? If I hate you in my heart, then I'm guilty of murdering you when I didn't really do the act of it, but because of the thing that's in me, that if I had the chance, I would do it in my heart. I'm guilty already. Or with the woman, if I'm gonna sit up here and do things with you in my mind from just looking at you, I'm guilty of it without the physical aspect of it coming to being. So I'm saying that when we look at this idea of abhorring or detesting, yes, when we think about the manifestation of it, of course you out of bounds if that thing is going to actually be fulfilled. But what about the thing that's inside of you that would bring you to manifesting that thing
like the
on the
spiritual
outside?
aspect, like controlling the spirit to be like, I'm going to.
I'm just saying, I think we got to look at it more than just the action of it, and then the thing. Because if I'm able to hate you in my heart, but not physically manifest it, I don't know how that puts me in a better position, because I still got hatred in my heart towards you. I'm just not acting on it.
Is dislike hatred?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Now, let's
it's like, okay, I don't like what you do, so I'm gonna stay away from you.
Exactly.
That's not hatred. Like, I don't hate you.
Because I feel like hate. Look, let's put that. Let's qualify that, because hate. When a person do something like, oh, that's a hate crime. They did something to really show that hate for them.
Mm-hmm.
You like, I hate that. And you just said it like, I get the internal. It's like, okay, you shouldn't hate, or you shouldn't feel a certain kind of way, or because I feel like the real hatred will bring it out. Like, it'll fuel that. So me saying, I don't look at him like, like, brother, huh? Like, brother? So it's like another thing of a layered thing. Like how it's saying, I'm getting from the vibe I'm getting in a ritual sense. A ritual, when you do a ritual, you're doing something in an ethical sense, meaning that there's an action carried out on your part to show that you hate them or you are doing something.
So you connecting this with action only. You saying it can't be your mind, and it can't be an internal thing.
I'm just saying
this loathing or detesting.
I'm just saying that because what we read in well, no, I ain't gonna go because that opening psalm was pretty interesting that we read, but
because this here, if you look at this, right, to love that is morally detest. So yes, you have the idea of the action, but from this standpoint, it's just dealing with, if I morally detest something, I don't know how is that actualized anyway?
Okay, so loathe is Loathe is feel intense dislike or disgust for.
So they translated that as loathe,
Low.
which is not necessarily. Now,
So I'm not supposed to love the KKK.
well, if that's the Edomite or
Well,
Egyptian,
can you hate an act?
I'm saying that whole idea of
Say
hate.
people that's just
That-
foul against
that
it,
whole
like
idea-
they, what you
family.
did.
I'm
not
saying the
supposed-
whole idea of hating the sin and not the sinner is not in the Bible. It's not biblical.
Right. I understand.
Right.
No, but that's what I no. When you said hate the
Most
act,
people-
It made me
can
think
you
about
hate,
that.
like racism. And, you know, like I hate
Like,
racism.
Well,
For instance,
yeah, but-
I hate white supremacists. You know, I hate oppression. You know, I hate anything
now see,
that's
but
out to
now,
crush us.
but what you just did right there. Now, see, the difference is that you talking about the act
the act,
or the individual.
the act itself.
Because if we was gonna put them, I keep on touching this like I can
But
scroll
this
this.
is just Edomites, though.
Well, yeah. So
Okay, so
I'm
can
saying
hate
if-
some other people.
if we're gonna put this on something, this is removing what these people have done from a situation and looking at them and saying, I'm not gonna deal with you based on what you've done.
Your action.
I'm gonna deal with you based on the fact that the Most High said, you're my brother. Now, if we're gonna sit up here and put other stuff in there from a principle standpoint, we could say, well, I don't hate the KKK member, but I hate the
Things that
doctrines.
I hate the things that they do. I
And
hate
what they
when
do.
Kill, you know,
Well, let me
and-
keep it 100 real quick, right? Just like when KRS says one, like, don't kick my door down and tie me up while my wife cooks the stew. You was here to protect us, but who protect us from you? In other words, I'm trying to say is, can we love this person if he come in, tie us up, and rape our wives of such nature? Though we would hate the act of it, but we stop and say, brother, I love you, but I don't like what you're doing. See, in that aspect right there, that's where I have to pray to y'all and ask him for guidance and help me, because I'm a work in progress. You know, I'm not perfect, because I will destroy somebody doing that to man. And I will have to humbly ask y'all to forgive me. I'm serious, because that's an area that I need help with. You know, like I fear running into the guy who killed my sister. I pray about that so much. Y'all give me the ability and the power to forgive and act it out. I don't know what I would do.
You know who it was?
Of course I do. You know, but I haven't even sought him out because I gave it to y'all. You know, I said, y'all, you said vengeance is yours. So here it is. I'm not going to act on this. You know, now if you can save this man, then save him, you know, because my wrath, me personally, I feel like Genghis Khan. You know, I'm the punishment of y'all. If you haven't committed such sin, y'all wouldn't send a punishment like me upon you. But then again, I have to adhere to my daddy when he said, vengeance is mine, fall back. You know, so just to let them know that I'm not perfect at all, man, because I have an evil streak too, you know, which I'm trying to get out of me. You know, I try to stay away from that.
So even in thinking about it from that angle, right? Thinking about you knowing of a thing that literally you know would bring you to a place of manifesting your hatred towards another individual. I think that when we look at this, we see that not that the Edomites and the Egyptians weren't in a place of deserving the hatred manifested on them. Not to say that they didn't deserve those things,
right?
But here in this verse, the Most High is saying that you're not supposed to deal with them in that way.
In what way? Oh, be like to hate him.
in terms of this loathing and this hatred. And you know, even when you look at Yeshua, when he talks about in Matthew,
But when they turn over the cheek,
no,
Well, you know, it's interesting here. We're told not to hate him, but the Most High hates him.
yeah, he also hated
but
Esau too.
so the thing about it is that we and people will say, well, the Most High did it, so I could do it. But the difference is that he told you not to do it.
Don't
So
do
that's
don't
a
do
big
as I
difference.
do what I say.
That's a big difference,
No.
right? So when it talks about Matthew chapter 5, verse 43, where it says, "You have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same?
Mm.
And if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as a Father which is in heaven and perfect. Right. So again, when we look at this and we look at those other verses back behind, again, it's showing you the character of the Almighty, where the things that we do is not supposed to be this reactionary thing. Like you got this individual who is your enemy, and he curses you, and he hates you, and he despitefully uses you and persecutes you. Just because the simple fact that all of those things is true, don't mean that I need to deal with you based on those things, right? We can't be a reactionary people. In fact, then he's even rising it above that. Even the Torah causes us to rise above that, because again, we're looking at the Edomites and the Egyptians, who are the sworn enemies of Israel. Yeah. And the Most High is bringing out the fact that this is your brother. Mm-hmm. And he's bringing out the fact that you was a stranger in his land.
We got to consider the fact what Elisha did to those 400 and something prophets, who was not of Yah. One of the great showdown when he pulled out his sword and slaughtered all of them. Did he hate them? Or was he doing the act of Yah?
Well, all I'm saying is that we can't do is find reasons to
reason. I think
those things are when we're looking at what we want to be able to gain from the Torah as a whole, is to be able to see what these underlying principles are and walk in these principles. And when we see that the what we see here really is, the character of the Almighty being manifest, when we look at these verses here, especially these ones here, and we dealing with this idea of how we are to even just be towards people who are our enemies.
Right.
Not to say, it's not to say that you're supposed to let people do whatever they want to do to you. Right. I think it's not, I don't think that's the same thing as to say if somebody was to come in here and be doing something to my family, I'm supposed to just sit down and watch it happen.
Right.
I don't think that's the same thing. But in terms of how I feel towards my literal enemy and those that are against me, the examples that the Most High and even Yeshua is giving is one that's based out of mercy, which doesn't have anything to do with what the individual has done. I mean, it's not to say that we are to be some pushovers, right? It's not to say that we just supposed to let people come around and just do whatever they want to do.
On their pot every time they see it.
Right. It's not that. Right. It's not that. But it's about at the end of the day, I think it's just really about exhibiting the character of the Almighty. That's what the Spirit does inside of us. When we allow the Spirit to be manifest, it's causing us to walk in a specific way that looks like, you know, what we just was looking at in these scriptures, looking at this thing that's lesser than what we are, these little eggs and this little bird, and not destroying the whole thing, looking at these people who are against us and don't do nothing but be against us, and yet still being able to look and realize that, oh wait, there's something in there that's a redeemable thing.
Talking about redeemable.
Well, I'm just saying based on the fact that the Most High said Edomites is your brother.
He got a purpose for him. That's what I'm getting, because just like with that thing with the eggs. People, you know, who he saw as who he ain't. All right, we ain't getting into that.
Mm-hmm.
But Obadiah, a whole book written about his judgment. He goes through a whole myriad of the only nation that gets no repentance. They found no repentance. So the Most High has a plan for them. I feel that we or nobody else can execute except for him. That's how I feel. It's like he got something special for them.
But at but at the same time, so really that's not saying anything different, but then saying that vengeance is mine.
Right.
Where you're not the one that's going to sit up here and do these things,
right?
Whether it's in thought or deed.
So I mean,
I'm not going against what you're saying. I'm in agreement with what you're saying.
Yeah. So like as far as neutrality, because hey, the opposite of hate is love. So
well, Yeshua said he brought it all the way. The Torah says don't hate. Then Yeshua brought it all the way up to love your enemy.
Love your enemy.
And the one who will persecute you and despitefully use you.
Yeah, I think that, you know, once you start, you know, manifesting these type of behavior like hatred and whatnot, you know, I think it, you know, starts to bear up like a bit of root in you. And so I think that, you know, Yahweh just wants us, you know, our vessels to be, you know, removed of all of those things so we can be in the right frame of mind for him to use us however he wants. And so if you have these things in there might be somebody you hate that he might want you to reach one day. You know what I'm saying? And if you got that bitter root of hatred in you, you're going to be like, man, I'm messing with that dude. And so you become unusable.
Right.
So I think in order for us to be usable for the Creator, we can't have those things in us. Because you never know what he's going to call you to do.
As convenient as it might seem to feel to have in you.
Right, yeah.
Or as easy as it is. It's easy to hate your enemy. That's, I mean, just you don't even got to think about it. It's just a natural reaction.
That same guy will call you nigger one day. Might, you know what I'm saying?
I was calling something back and then keep moving.
Be your best friend be a next day.
I doubt that. You showed me that.
You never know.
You never know. I doubt it.
I mean, anything's possible.
Next day.
Maybe a week later.
Example. I don't know. But I don't know.
All right. Well, all that being said, let's just go ahead and we want to be able to as you say, we want to be able to continue to be able to allow the Spirit to work in our hearts and allow the Spirit to be manifest in our lives and be able to walk out the character of the Almighty. And we come across these things, which when we look at these things, it's in our flesh. In our flesh, it's hard. In our flesh, these things are hard for us to do, right? But when we let the Spirit rule, it gives us the strength and the power and the ability to be able to walk these things out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In wisdom.
The whole world can hate us, but we can't hate nobody.
We are the vessels of wrath right now. His wrath is being poured out upon us.
Yeah.
Like the great tribulation is our tribulation. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Hey.
With love.
Okay. All right. So all that being said, we will be done for now with this. Hopefully next week. Next week. We'll be going to the conference.
Yep.
And so we'll be back after that. Okay. All right. Then shalom.